that was great.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to our special meeting of March 5th. I will now officially call the meeting to order and the time is 1 p.m. To start with, we'll begin with our land acknowledgement and a moment of silent reflection. I'll now ask members to declare any pecuniary interest before council if they have any. Seeing no hands. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. May I get a motion to approve today's agenda as circulated? Deputy Mayor Burke, Councillor Walsh, all in favor? Motion is carried. Moving right along to the staff report, second draft of the 2025 budget summary, CAO Allen, review it. Please proceed with your presentation.
If you could please pull up the chart from page 3. That's going to be an important piece for us. So the way we're going to be doing the presentation is I'm going to go through the individual budgets from the council. If you have any questions, then I will do my best to get those answered. And then once we finish that, the treasurer is going to kind of wrap it up and show everybody where we're at from there and what we can do. So as I go through each one, I'm going to ask you if there are any questions and try to deal with them right then, as opposed to get it to the end. In some cases, you will notice, if you look at that chart, every budget except for one, and when we get there, I'll talk to that one, has a reduction in it. Some of them are smaller reductions because they weren't necessarily big budgets to start with. Some of them are bigger reductions, and those are probably where some of our longer discussions will be taking place. So I guess I'll start with any questions on the process.
You know, you're going through each department. I like that.
Okay. So first one we'll start with is council boards and committees. So a lot of this stuff may seem familiar from last time because not a whole lot has changed last month. There are some pieces. So the big difference on this one is from what was previously presented to what is presented today. You're looking at about a $6,400 decrease. So the areas that we looked at were the committee budget line, the donation budget line, we adjusted there. The library went back and they did some work, and theirs is a reduction as well. I'll get to the library in just a second. We did keep our transfer to election reserves the same because we need that for the election for next year. So from 24 to 25, we're looking at about just over $8,000 difference. But that's reduced from what was originally presented as a 14,000. Are there any specific questions on this one?
Council?
It's page 29.
Thank you. No questions on Deputy Mayor Burke?
Excuse me, thank you through you. I guess, if we're just looking at the lines, the events committee, business advisory committee, you've dropped it, from 5 to 3. I'm good with 2,500 there, so I'm just throwing it out. I'm seeing that drop again.
Counselor Ward.
Just a clarification number, since I think we're going through, it looks like we're going through, each department. If we are kind of making recommendations, do we go through each department and then, make a motion on those for each department?
What I would suggest, Counselor, is as we go through, we can ask the clerk to keep track of them. If there, again, if there's discussions that you want to have, and they have the opportunity to have those discussions. At the end, if that's a change you want, then you can capture them all at one time.
I'm wondering if we should do it department by department, because I think it'd be a lot for the, clerk to capture. If we're having discussions, I don't know how anybody else feels, sorry, I'm just being through you, Mayor, sorry.
Council, what's your wishes?
I guess I'll, through you, I'll put that back on the clerk to see what is her best
You-
story.
The envisioning, sorry, through you, Mayor, if the motion were to be that you receive the report for information as discussed throughout, I think that could be captured that way, and not just say just capture the pieces individually. So the motion wouldn't speak to each change per se, if you're comfortable with that. That's, again, I'll leave that for council if that's.
I'm comfortable with it. You comfortable now? Yes,
If there's something specific, we can always
okay,
do that too.
all right. Council Ward.
Thank you for you, Mayor. Just a clarification on other payroll costs. What does that encompass? It would be handy. I think there's maybe needs a few more notes. So I'm sorry, some of these are need to be broken down maybe a little bit more. So you've got the other payroll costs for 13,807. What does that encompass?
Every place you see payroll, you're going to see other payroll costs. So that could be your owner's contribution. Anytime when the municipality has to match something, for instance, CPP, UI, owners, benefits, anything like that, that's all captured under other payroll costs. And like I say, every place you see a payroll cost, you will see other payroll costs.
So that wouldn't encompass any council costs. It would be more of like a staff, because we don't have any of those
If
costs.
there's a member of council and they wanted to contribute to owners, then we would have to match their figures. So, and I don't know if there is anybody who's not, that's just one commission anyway, but any place where that's there, those are all the other, like I say, CPP, owners, benefits, whatever it might be, that's other payroll costs.
Okay. Thank you.
Good with that one? So,
Sorry, just so I'm clear, so we've saved $1,000.
Yes.
I'm sure no one. So, and just for everybody's frame of reference here. $45,000 is approximately 1%. I'm using nice round numbers. So if you try to add up, say, okay, what did that save us? $45,000, and it was approximately 1%. So I'm gonna drop to the library. Once the library is actually in that one, so they had a special meeting earlier this week. They have reduced their budget then by $3,157. Yes, again, another one for the stock. Yeah. Are there? No. Yes. I saw her earlier. Trish is with us. Are there any specific questions anybody had for her or anything like this?
Library board? No? All right, we'll move on.
So next one we move down to is administration, and some of this information you heard before, but I will reinforce it. One of the areas where we had an increase on the revenue side was interest rates have gone down. We don't have quite as much money in the bank, therefore we're not seeing as much interest as we have maybe in previous years. There were a couple of projects that the website upgraded and improved because there was a timeline that was attached to that, so that has gone through. Insurance, you've heard us talk about it a couple of times. Insurance has gone up across the province. Every municipality is facing this issue. I can tell you, we have had a conversation with the CEO of the county meeting last month. We have our meeting tomorrow about potentially doing some kind of joint insurance, to see if that will get a savings for us. I wish I could tell you we're going to see significant savings. The insurance companies know that they we have to have it. They are not of particular minds who work with us, they are about making a buck. So if there are savings, we're gonna be looking for them. But being realistic, insurance is going to be a challenge, has been a challenge for the last number of years, and will continue to be a challenge. Asset management, we have money assigned to that. That's being driven by the province. We have legislative requirements that we have to meet now, so we have to do the asset management. We are hoping to have the report to you either the 25th or the first one in April. We're shooting for the 25th. That's what we're pushing them on. That will get us the report that we have to get to the province, and then there's work that we need to do for 2025. HR and health and safety arrangements. That's costing us like $20,000, but it is good work to do. It is good pieces to have. It will help us in the long run. Any questions on the administration side?
Councillor Walsh.
Through you, Mayor, just on that HR county and health safety review piece, I'm aligned that it does help us. Is there any portion of that could be spilled into 26, or would that be all 25? I think that's that kind of way we could say a little bit.
Through you, Mayor, that is all 25 expense. However, for 2026, once we're done with the health and safety piece, we won't have to continue with that. They'll have what we need, and hopefully we'll see our rates. The plan is that our rates will go down to accommodate for what we've done this year. The HR with the county, that is a recurring, we have a yearly agreement with them now. At some point, we decided that we weren't getting value for that we can reflect on that one. My plan is to bring a report probably sometime in late Q3, early Q4, outlining exactly what value we've got for it. And then the council could decide for next year, yes, it was worth having, or no, it wasn't. We've only had the contract in place since January 1st, so it's really, and I would say, we worked with them since January, we've got this quarter's covered off. I hope that that's going to continue. Again, personally, I feel that it brings value in a number of different ways, and it's a good piece to have.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Burke.
Yeah, just back on that, health and safety review. So the HR is 10,000, right? From the county. So with the 25.2, that's 17,000, okay? I am struggling with that one because I'm just wondering, if that was something that could be done in-house, like we quite often copy other areas. I'm just a little concerned about that one.
It can't be done in-house.
It can't be.
We do not have the expertise.
Okay.
You guys are doing this. This is what they do every day.
Okay.
They are working with our health and safety committee. If the minister, I want to be very careful when I say open council here.
Yep.
If the Ministry of Labor came in because we had an issue right now, I am not comfortable where we are.
Okay. All right. And then also, on committees, you have the expenses in this budget, and then in this department as well as the previous one. I'm just wondering.
Go ahead, Mayor. So this is the way that it's always been done. So essentially it's my understanding commitment from council to the committee. So it comes in on, should be in the revenue.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah, so it comes in as the revenue and the expenses.
So it shows it twice, but it's
It
only.
shows it twice.
It's
There's
in
only one impact. So
Okay,
it's-
I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, the administration side should be a zero really in the end, and then you out.
Okay,
And
thank you.
council should show the commitment from council to the.
Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thank you for you. So I have a couple questions. The computer expenses at 25,157, can any of those outlined planned purchases be delayed? I also have a question about the advertising and promotion for 10,000, that's a newspaper ad. And I know that we've done it, but it doesn't capture even a quarter of our township now. And also when was the last time, like the phone provider and the contract for internet, when was the last time it was updated, and there's any potential savings? Because I looked, there's quite a few lines with phones, and I'm sure that you get a bundle deal, I hope, but I just see that there's like phone expenses through every department. Thank you.
Through your, trying captured them all, if I missed anything, you let me know. So the first one you had mentioned was the computers. So between some different software we have, upgrades that are required, and between the age of some of the machines that kind of ties it. If we want to. Upgrades, so a good piece of the 25,000 is related to upgrading either software or PCs to let us do what we need to do. So
Just to follow up on
Yes.
computers, so there's no way that some of those computer purchases could be delayed for another year?
I'd be happy to follow up with the IT. My understanding is not, because some of those changes are already coming into effect. I see a hand.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Through you here, I think I responded to you yesterday, Paul.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is our renewal for our accounting software and tax software, all stuff that we might we need to operate.
Right,
Some of it is related to repair and equipment replacement
Yeah.
as needed. But most of it is through our IT, staff member Mike, for what's required, renewals, Microsoft 365 licenses. I think there were $8,000 or $9,000 this year, when we factor all of it into it. So the line says it computer expenses, and one thing I would caution council when you're looking at it. The descriptor in there that's in the system. There's more to it sometimes, if we ask us, we'll try to clear it, but we're not out on 10 to 5, 6 computers next year. So that line essentially was going, sent to our IT guy, Mike. He comes back, this is what we have, we look at the GL details, this is what the renewal costs are. We look at the contracts, are there increases, that kind of thing. So we're not buying $25,000 for computers and upgrades, that kind of thing. A lot of it is year-over-year costs with running our system and the software. And that's kind of the stance would be there, probably the least techy person in
Councilor Moore?
I do have a follow-up. Has there been any conversation with the county, computer services and technology that some of these costs could be shared?
Go ahead.
We started having conversations with the county about potential IT support back in January. Currently, they do 2 of the municipalities within the county. I also had follow-up conversations with both of those CEOs to see what kind of service levels they were getting, were they happy with the service that they've got. They both indicated to me that there had been some challenges. We continue to explore it. If there's a way we can do something with them. I think you guys know me well enough by now that if there's a way to work with somebody else, I'm all over that piece. At this point, though, from a cost perspective, I don't know that it would make a significant difference one way or the other.
Just to comment on that, I have a problem too with joining the county. I've noticed different municipalities have been hacked. It's the bigger ones. They're gonna see bigger funds with Peterborough. They're not coming after Little Norwood. I far sooner see us be on our own with the IT and share with Daryl Dummer.
The only thing I will say that there is the bad people who do the bad IT stuff, they just go after the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. And while I tend to agree with you, we're not one of the bright, shiny ones they might, we're still just as many. I did not blow my name over the first thing they talked about in cybersecurity. It is the challenge. If there is a way to work, whatever that might be, hopefully we'll bring a report back to council sometime in Q2, Q3. I'm waiting for their IT manager to get back to me. He was supposed to take a look at our stuff and give us some of his thoughts.
Right.
Our IT guy has been off with a medical issue, so I know that they had talked before he went off. We are definitely investigating it. I think we would look for a better service level. I don't know there'll necessarily be a cost savings. Now, I think that's a little bit.
Okay.
So the next one, I
Yes.
believe, was around the newspaper advertising. So the approach that historically we have taken is to try and have as many channels as possible, so that to reach out to the public. We do all kinds of stuff online now. We have a strong social media presence, and we know that we get a lot of good feedback from the community on it, that people are seeing it. But we also know that there are people out there, seniors or whatever reason, who don't get online. This is one more venue where they potentially can see our messaging. If council doesn't want it there, that's something that you can take out, but like I said, from my point of view, the more channels we have out to the public, the better it is for everybody.
I'm just thinking there could be potential savings if the ad wasn't put in weekly, maybe bi-weekly, you'd save half the amount. The other thing is, I would like to see how many households that paper actually hits in our community, because it doesn't hit as many as you think, and is it cost effective? Because if it's not, is it worth it? Sorry, I'm just putting those things out, and I'm all about communication, and I agree that there's a portion of the population that's not on the internet, but I think, and I appreciate all the work everyone's done, I should have said that prior. But there's still more work to be done, we're in challenging times, I think everyone can admit to that. And so I don't mean to be so nitpicky, but like when you look at $10,000, are we getting value for that money at this time?
Yes.
So those ones, I hear everything you're saying. Trying to find a way to measure that is going to be challenging. I do think it starts with like how many are out there. We can go back and we can say, okay, if we review only once a month, what kind of price difference are we looking at here? We can have that, we can explore that to see what we can get. I don't know that it's gonna be a significant number, but every penny does help, so it's not a bad thing to go and have that conversation.
Okay. Did you have another question there, Paul?
I think that he was, but the phone provider, I think was the last one. I didn't-
Yes.
I'm sorry, yes, I know, I'm just on a roll here, sorry.
Okay, no problem. So I'm actually gonna ask Jordan, because I know he had done some work on that one, so maybe I'll kind of turn that one again.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, so the phone internet is expiring in 2025. They have provided all of our buildings essentially, and they are working on savings. We should see some savings. There are some current packages we have, we've been told that we are at the lowest rate, but they have identified a few too, where they do think there will be new bundle packages as they come out, and the potential for, going to a different provider, maybe to negotiate better pricing. So that we just don't have yet.
That contract runs to the end of this year, so the savings Jordan's referring to, that wouldn't be until 2026.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but does that include cell phones?
Does,
Sorry, so that is for Eastlink. It does not include cell phones. I
Yeah.
believe Mike was, the cell phone, looking into the cell phones, I think they're available, is that correct?
We are, but what we've tried to, since I've gotten the last year, one of the things that we tried to do more than said giving somebody a cell phone is giving them an allowance on it. So in myself, I use my own cell phone, but I get allowance because we get a better deal that way. So that's something we've been trying to do more of that since I got here, so.
okay.
Yeah.
Deputy Member,
Thank you. Just to follow up on some of the questions and answers, as far as the IT and software go, the bill at the county is huge, quite frankly. Same thing, it's updates, it's cybersecurity. I'm not sure that you're going to get the savings if you went with county. That's a huge piece that really jumped up on the 2025 budget at the county, and I think that's everywhere. And when I first saw that too, I saw, oh, that's a lot of new computers, but the majority of it is software, and they gotcha. Again, they gotcha. And so I just want to touch on that. The newspaper. I don't know too many people who get that paper anymore. They keep cutting it back. We do. And quite frankly, there is nothing in it from our community other than Jeff Dorman's article and our little piece. Communication is huge. Let's face it, we're not unique. It's every community, no newspapers anymore. I think that's a piece that we really need to take a hard look at.
it could be going out with your tax bill quarterly. I know
Yeah,
that cuts it back to quarterly, but at least with the.
Like, it is nice to see that ad and know what's going on, and it has, library events, it has job openings, it has a number of different things, but I don't know that 1,000 households in the township would receive it, or go and pick it up, because I think there's a box in, excuse me, a box in Westwood, and I see an awful pile of them in the recycling bin, not even opened.
So through you, Mayor. What I'm hearing then is maybe this isn't so much go back and take a look at it, that it sounds like we're working and walking ourselves toward a decision that that's not something we want to pursue. Now, the other thing is, we can stop it for this year. We get a lot of feedback and people say, oh, I really missed that. I was getting so much that. There's nothing that next year we can go back and
Revisit.
it. Yeah, so.
We've talked about this before, this is
Oh, yeah.
not a new
Oh, no,
conversation.
a lot of municipalities this size in Ontario have gone through the same thing in Devonshire, in that historically the newspaper was a big deal in a small community. That isn't the case in this day and age.
Councillor Hodgkrees.
Through you, Mayor, and is there any longer a legal requirement for things to be posted in a newspaper? Because at one point, I can't remember what it was, there was something that had to be posted in a newspaper, so
It
would
did.
we be missing out? And I mean, it's a tricky one because the people who get it are people who may not even have a computer or access, so it's a tricky one. And also, in a previous council meeting, we discussed doing a mail out, and the cost for that was very high.
It was.
Very high as well, so are we just shuffling the deck chair from one cost to another and kind of hitting the same number of people? I think it's hard to know without knowing the distribution of the paper.
Very good. I would want to go back and double check just what the legal requirement is, but I believe about 2 years ago, during some COVID, they made some changes to that, so as long as we're posting it, I believe we're okay, but we would want to double check that. There is nothing that's, and I think in the planning department in particular, they may have some of that. There was nothing stopping us from having like one-offs when needed, as opposed to having a regular one. Again, there'd be some savings happening.
All right,
So is there a decision by council, or is that an investigation piece?
Councillor.
The big comment. I don't, I'm not, so right now we're weekly. So there would be some savings going to monthly, but again, all these newspapers, you know, are work their magic and the savings may not be a lot. I think it's from a job posting standpoint, people will be looking at websites to find stuff out. It comes down to, I'm not sure that we have 1,000 people, but I don't get it.
You don't,
It
Grant.
used to be a box in Westwood, that box doesn't have it, I don't believe anymore.
No, they used to, it's gone.
So I just,
The distribution isn't this.
it's not there, it's in a year where things are tough, maybe yes, we'll probably get some responses from people that they're not happy with it, but I'm in favor of just cutting it for a year and see what happens.
I'm just wondering, trying to think how this would work, so the ad that goes in. If somebody's complaining that it's not in there anymore, I'm just wondering if, you know, Melanie makes up. Something and they can come into the office, I don't know, I'm just. I don't know, just trying to think of something.
And sorry,
Go ahead.
to that through you, perhaps even if it was a little thing and sent to Jeff Dornan once a week, he would include it in his article.
If that's okay with him.
It may not, but he does community news, he may not want to, but I mean, if he gets information from groups, he may put it in.
You may put it in.
So I think that idea is suggestion. The only piece I will add to that is if we argue that we have or we don't necessarily have any control on when he might put it. If he's short a week, he might throw it in. If it's not another week, like, again, that's when it's unpaid, we have no control over it. So again, we are still looking at if there's other avenues that if we're not gonna do this, is there something else we could potentially do that won't cost us any money? And we do use social media very well. We get a lot of messaging out that way. We get some very positive feedback on it. You know, if this is a channel we don't feel is giving us value more than, let's not use it.
Let's not use it. Deputy Member.
So just from the conversation that I will make a motion that we remove the $10,000 fee for advertising in the community press, but the staff continue to look at ways to enhance our communication.
I would second that.
Just
Councillor Roar will second.
Sorry,
Any
just with the-
discussion?
comment around, it has to be whether it's within the
If
legal,
it's legal.
if we're allowed to legally.
So through you, Mayor, what I would suggest in that piece is right now we're using it as a regular monthly piece and we post up if we have something. If we have one in the building side where it's a
Okay.
requirement, we would do that as a separate piece.
Okay.
Any other questions on administration?
No. We haven't called the motion yet, though.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Is everybody in favor? Did you want to read?
Oh,
We don't want that.
oh, no, this is perfect.
Oh, it
But,
is.
sorry, through you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a point, and I apologize. But we also have community boards that we can refer people to. We spend a lot of time putting posters at various locations in the township.
Townships.
And we do spend time, various departments update those. So we could, the people that do come in, we could always point them there, provide them with our newsletters, our year in review, we could print the website, all that stuff would be, if we get that kind of people.
So all in favor of the motion then? The motion's carried. Carry on.
The next one we have is facilities, and that is down 38,000, almost 38,500 from the previous budget. So the pieces we have there are some increased hours on work that's being done. They, during for the 2024 budget, we under budgeted the utilities costs, so the utilities costs are a more accurate reflection in this year's budget. There was the Northwood well, but that's coming out of reserve, that is not impacting our tax levy. There was the roof at 31 King, the town hall East Rock. We have gotten some feedback from council about potential, the whole thing, is there a way we can do a piece of those projects to get the work that absolutely has to be done? So the manager is exploring that, and yeah, the snow guard is the same. So are there any particular specific questions for this one?
I'll ask about the eave trough, Seamus. Is that a quoted price for doing the eave trough?
Through you, Mayor, yes.
Okay. I'm looking at every household in Asphodel-Norwood this year has ice problems. Is that the reason why the eave trough in the southeast corner, you can see it split open in the corner, most likely ice? Would a heated cable around that eave trough not be a better option?
So through your mayor, that can be something, staff look into. This, so you guys are aware, this isn't the first year that's been an issue. The last couple of years, I believe it was either 2024 or late 2023, a staff member actually felt coming to work. So, there are other facilities that ice wells have been worse this year due to now snow and ice. But that could be something for all facilities, if you look into whether it's feasible. Also, you have to consider, are there enough outside outlets
And that's-
and all that, but that can be definitely something that staff will look into.
Further questions, Council? Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, just a couple of things through there. One is on the 31 King Street roof. 25K. I know in the perfect world, it would be nice when the paramedic side is being done, that we do ours too, because I get it, they're all there. It's less expensive, but in a year where things are really tough. Is there a way that we can just look at repairing the piece that potentially is a problem and like move for another couple of years?
I'll take that one first, and the manager wants to add anything after. And you use the phrase perfect world, which,
Yeah.
as we work through this budget process, has become one of my favorite phrases. We're not in that perfect world. The piece I would point out is the age of the building is the age of the building, the roof is that old. We can try and put patches on, and we'll probably have a similar conversation when you get to the rec center. At some point, all you've got is a 20-year-old roof with a bunch of patches on it, and it isn't going to do the job. And that's the part where, what's the balance between, okay, how much do we pay up front? It's done, it's now a new roof, and we don't have to worry about it, versus, okay, we're gonna continue to put the patches on. A lot of times with patches, all it does is move it to a different part of the roof. And then eventually, at some point, that roof fails, and there's damage inside the building, and what does that damage cost us? I know it's the balance between where do we spend that money, and which ones really need it, and which ones can't wait the year. That's the challenge. So, anything else you want to throw in on that one?
So pretty, this year, where the leak happened, it's actually where the two roofs overlap. Last time it was done was poorly, that's why it's leaking. So the day that we found out the leak, we had that contractor look at it. He gave us a rough idea that our shipment might last maybe 2 more years. So that's the reason we took the council, is that they're only in the last 2 more years, why we potentially fix. Of course, but on that too, we don't know until they actually start the work, how much of the roof is wrong. Is it a 5-foot section? Is it a whole part? And when they were up there that day, like, you could physically see, you know, the contractor's step, his foot clearly, without you can tell it's wrong. So that could be something that If you were to push it off a year, it could just have to be done in 2026. But again, the reason we were thinking is replace the whole thing altogether, so that potentially it doesn't happen again. The paramedics do their portion this year, we do our portion next year, the overlap is seamless, and something would happen.
Yeah, return on that. That 25K savings, that is just our portion of that roof, correct?
Through your mayor, correct?
Deputy Mayor,
Follow up on that, has that been an RFP or this was just a quote from the guy came to?
So
Okay,
through,
so-
that was just a call, so what happened, I believe it was mid-year. Obviously, once we had a person come that day, with it being a leak, we had an electrician come in, because actually one of the lights did fall. So the paramedics were fully planning on doing theirs this year. We told them it wasn't doing the budget, and obviously having the leak. But yes, we for sure would have to tender that. Also, when the paramedics did get tenders, one of their tenders came in. When they got quotes for the whole building, and of course, one of the quotes came in way less, and that was the contractor that hadn't saw that it was rotten. So if we were to fully tender this, all people out there would have all the same information, knowing that, hey, it's not as easy as just peeling shingles off, putting them down. It's peeling shingles off, replacing all the spots that are rotten, and then fixing.
And can I just have a follow-up?
Yes.
Yeah, just on this, we all know, with tariffs and stuff, it will be interesting to see where the cost of building materials are gonna land this year, so, but no, I was, when they did a roof in the township, I think it was the library, I think we were all really surprised how reasonable the price was for that one. So I'm going to be optimistic and think that it's going to come in a little cheaper, I don't know, but, yeah, that was one I had circled as well. It makes sense to do it all at once, it's just a little tricky, but, if I could just make a comment on the town hall eavesdrops, the guards, and, what else, I guess that was it. I'm just wondering if, staff could come back with maybe adjusted numbers with adjusted scope of job on, the eavesdrop, depending on where we go, and the library guard vestibule. I know it's only small, but I just.
It all adds up. Councillor Hodge agrees.
Yeah, I think it's important actually that we should just replace the King Street roof. I think having it patched, and then if it's not patched well, the roof's rotten. They may end up, I feel that we have to, I think this is a bullet we're gonna have to bite this year. Because once water gets into things, the damage can be, way more than 25,000 if you have electrical issues. So I think especially as the other half, the other portions being done, I don't think that we should be cutting the roof. And then the snow guards, again, they're important to make sure that the ramp that we're getting redone lasts longer. And I think sometimes it's a bit of prevention as opposed to remedial work, which ends up costing more, and then you have to pay for it because it's an emergency. So I think some of these ones are, I think we have to do them, make sure they're done cost effectively.
Okay. Councillor Ward.
Thank you. I agree with the roofing piece, but I do have another question.
Yes.
With the facilities, budget. One is, nonprofit occupants of, King Street. And, the clean staffing duties that are allocated to, all of the facilities in general. If you look, the payroll costs, we have them increased from 21,918 to almost 50,000, 49,962. I don't think that that's feasible in this year. I don't know if, I think that there needs to be a realignment and a restructuring of what includes light cleanup in workspaces. I think there's maybe ways to look at it differently, perhaps for the nonprofit. I know if I was getting a building, and we do it at the Heritage Center, our committee cleans the Heritage Center. No one comes out to clean it. We take our own vacuums. And so I don't think it would be a lot to ask any of the nonprofit organizations to buy, or maybe we buy a vacuum and they clean the space. Maybe we look at doing that space because we spend 16 hours per month cleaning King Street. The medical center is 18 hours per week, so that's 72 hours of cleaning the medical center. And the township office is 7 hours per week. And I'm sorry, I just think that we cannot increase that budget line by more than 50%. You've got a 90%, more than 50% increase in that line is, in my opinion, and I would like to hear other people's
Right.
opinions on that.
My own opinion on that is if I'm in an office down there and I have a recycle bucket and garbage pail, I could empty that myself without hiring somebody in to go and do it. But that's mine. Go ahead.
So
Oh, I thought you had your hand up there.
Well, that was just my standard place.
And I do agree with you on the cleaning costs. Seamus, maybe you can fill us in a little bit. Alan, you did say that no. Seamus, what cleaning is done at King Street? Is it just the vestibule?
Three, all answer that, and I'll quickly let Jordan talk about why there's such a difference in the wages. So 31 King Street. Gas and rents, Keel spotted the two offices between the washroom. She cleans her space, PCF, she declared cleans her space. Our staff have to clean the rest of the washroom.
Vestibule and washroom only. Go ahead, Jordan.
Thank you through you, Mayor. So I couldn't, sorry, Councilor Ward, couldn't hear you perfectly, so if I did. Not hear correctly, please correct me. So there has been a little realignment of the wages in the facilities department, so. The part-time wages last year, the actuals were a little over 18,000. If you take the actuals last year further down in the GL details, you add it to the actuals for full-time salary. That gives you about 40,000. So really the increase right now is 10, not as much as the 21.49. And it is because last year the position was in the part-time line. This year, because it's 40 hours, it's hitting the full-time line. So a lot of that is just a realignment. It's not actually, close to $30,000 increase in salaries for the one line. There's over 18,000 that was spent in 2024. It's just hitting. So there is an increase in the department compared to last year, but it's not 30,000.
And I appreciate that, but I still think there should be a decrease. I just think it's, I just think it's not reasonable in this time, in this budget.
Any further comments? Councilor Walsh?
Yes, you, Mayor. And really just, so thank you very much, sort of, for clarifying this. Now, I'm Steve, putting in there. It's not really a big jump because otherwise it would look like a big jump. Seamus, thank you very much for getting back to me, because I had a lot of questions from this line as well. I guess I'm gonna echo Councilor Ward's comments. One is around the town hall, 7 hours per week. That's like a full day, seems like, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like a lot. And then the other one is the medical center, 18 hours per week. That's basically 3 days of wages per week.
So three is there.
Appreciate the additional insight.
So municipal office currently when I get big voice Wednesday nights and sometime before Monday. I know in the past it has been an option sometimes due to staff's availability or during COVID, staff were able to on Wednesday look after their own. That's something that CEO and office staff would have to agree to. Regarding the new medical center, typically when Keel was here previously at 31 King Street, it was clean nightly, which is 3 hours per night. This one, the reason we increased a little is now that we know there's additional doctors coming, there's all offices are gonna be used, but maybe that's something that now hearing that sometimes they're not open on Wednesdays, if we're told that our caretaker doesn't have to clean them on Wednesdays. Or maybe there's days that if they're not open to the public, if they're just open for doing work, maybe it's a quick 1 hour thing because you're just going, there's no patient rooms, it's just checking the garbage and that, but for that one. Because it's a medical center in the past, it was 50, and the reason for the 3 extra hours was due to a projected it's a larger space, but that's something we could revisit, and maybe it is that. Maybe it's only 4 days, and if they have a slow day that, you know what, it's not getting clean, because I know in the past with Keel. Every other week, they weren't open to the public on Wednesdays, they were just in there to potentially do some shredding in that. So maybe it is, if moving forward, if medical center isn't open 5 days, if that's what their hours are. Maybe it's, hey, we're only cleaning it when they're open. also on that too is, the one day there was a snowfall, they didn't open, but again, our staff unfortunately were told, so our staff went still clean, and obviously, they might not have been there 3 hours, but if there's ever a day that, hey, due to weather circumstances or a power outage or whatever, they can open if we're notified, then I can contact our caretaker and, have you clear.
Okay,
Just
Councillor
to
Walsh.
follow up again, and thank you very much for the insight, and I'm not saying people aren't doing a good job cleaning, I just think. The word we talked about last meeting is efficiency, so any place at all where we can trim and save. I challenge all the departments to do that, not just your department, but yeah, there's days that we can do it in the day instead of a night, that's not costing us nighttime hours, just. Any place we can find some efficiency, shameless in all departments, very much welcome.
Councillor Hodgkrees.
I do also feel that it's around the maintenance piece and the prevention piece. If we don't maintain and we don't keep things clean, then the more dirt that gets tracked in the medical facility, I assume has to be cleaned to a certain standard. I think, yes, I agree with efficiencies, but I also think we shouldn't minimize the importance because we all don't like dirty spaces and we all comment when a space isn't clean. And if you're telling someone to clean a space in an hour and it actually takes 2 hours, then it just can't be done as well. So I just think we have to be cautious with, we want the facilities to be cleaned regularly so that they are maintained and that they last longer. That's the whole
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a balancing act and
It's a balance.
it's a balancing act. I just think that the more, if you don't clean the library all the time, then the floors, the dirt gets tracked into the carpet, which means then you have to clean the carpet more often and then you have to replace the carpet sooner. So I think it's easy right now to push the costs down the road, but you don't want to push them too far down the road because then it costs too much. So I don't really have a firm opinion on this. I just think we have to be mindful of not undervaluing the preventative nature of some of these costs.
Right. Deputy Mayor Burke.
Thank you. I'm changing the subject. But if you need to discuss it further, go ahead. And I know this doesn't hit the levy, but the capital invested wells, $80,000 wells project, and I know that's been deferred. I know this has been on the table for 10, 11, 12 years. This is going to be an ongoing thing because there's no water in West. We kind of know that. The water that is there is quite questionable. You will likely get into salt. You will likely get into salt. We found that out with the library very easily. You ask any resident in Westwood, when that river drops, the wells go dry. I really struggle with this, even though it is from our reserves. Again, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. This situation resulted from the salt zone, which the county owned. We ended up holding the bag somehow, not sure how. I'm just throwing this out there that we have to be cautious, because that $80,000, if we have to put treatment systems in and everything else, I'm concerned about that piece more than anything. So that's just my comment, and you've been kind of thrown into this, Adam, and I know where you're coming from, and something needs to happen with that situation. I just don't know if drilling wells is the answer, so that's just my comment.
Alan?
So, through you, Mayor, I share your concern, and this is one that, as you said, it goes back 10, 12 years, and people just kick this one down the road, hoping that the next guys will have to deal with it. I think, and whether it's drill well, I think we need to do some work on this year, just to figure out what is actually reasonable and what isn't, as opposed to just kick it down. We know that problem is there. You live in the area, you know it much better than I do on what the wells are probably gonna end up. But knowing it's been out there for 10 to 12 years and literally no work has been done with it other than to say, okay, we'll keep pushing that one down. It's not a good way to do business.
And I agree something has to be done. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I'm just throwing a word of warning out there. You start drilling wells.
The unfortunate is the fortunate piece is no matter what it is, it's going to cost us
Yeah.
some money to do it. The other part is if we do just push it down the road, that 80,000, there's gonna be 100,000, 2 years from now, it's gonna be 120,000. And so I strongly, and again, I acknowledge the uncomfortable piece that goes with this one because of the length of time. But I really strongly suggest that we try to do something this year.
And I do agree. I'm just making that comment.
Comments, fine. Councillor Ward.
Thank you. I would just like to take on to what Deputy Mayor Bird says. I think that you have to be very careful because the well that is at the corner is a good producing well. If you go in and hit that bank, then we may not have water at our facility. And that is a big concern in Westwood because I've seen it done before. I've seen it happen because of just the way that the water runs in that, like we had had a farm. Like a quarter of a mile and we own property in Westwood. I know it very, very well. I just think that it's, if you're opening up to a multitude of potential issues. I think you need to look very, very carefully, like maybe UV systems or some other, as I said, I don't know the solution either. But maybe you look at putting a UV system if you're afraid of the staff time going out to check the water. Like maybe start there, but I think that anybody that has a home in that area knows the challenges. So I agree with Deputy Burke. I think that we have to be very careful on this.
Hear you, just another thought on that. Certainly we've seen a lot of information come down the pipes when it comes to development about communal wells and communal wastewater systems. Maybe that's an option using that. Well, I don't know. I'm not a water person. I don't know. I'm just trying to make some agreement.
Also not a water person, it does speak a little while. I would suggest that part of our approach should be to explore any potential options.
You're right.
The challenge with the communal well piece that if something happens to us, not just one home is being affected, it's the entire communal piece. But I will speak some water with the water manager and we will see what we can. If there are approaches that can be considered before we get to the $80,000. What I can suggest is that we can bring a report back to the council later this year and say, okay, here are option A, B, or C, whatever we have, right? And D is always leave it for now. As much as that causes me concern, so.
Give us some options.
And I think we can do that because it doesn't levy.
No, well, that is the other piece to remind, the problem is if you spend that $80,000 and then there's an issue because of it, all of a sudden the work that would need to be done, that potentially what could hit this levy or the next, and that's, we always want to be careful.
Correct. Councillor Ward.
Sorry, just one follow-up, because I had reached out to Adam about this question, because it's 80,000 this year, but there was an additional a cost for the following year, because you said it would go up to 105 or 106. So the 80,000 is not all that's going to come out of reserves, because then there was an additional 26,000 for the following year. So the 80,000 is, and maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, like, sorry, we're escalating costs here.
Go ahead.
And I'm getting this wrong out, let me know, but I believe that costing for next year was for actually continuing the testing to make sure that what they've done is actually solving the problem.
Yes, go ahead.
That will also be for trenching water lines, talking with the new systems, if the water has come back good. Actually, those costs would be.
Come back to the options.
So that's.
Right.
Yes. So the next one we have is the new medical center, and again, this is another one where this is approximately just over $38,000 less than the budget that was presented in February. And we highlight, I don't think I really highlighted it to the degree that I could have last time, so I want to make sure I do it this time, is that one of the big challenges here with this one is if you look at what was levied in 2024, it was $52,000 basically.
Yes.
I wasn't here for that budget. I'm not a big fan of throwing people on the bus who were here when I was here. That number
He's way out of
was
us.
way off.
We were all throwing that out.
And if that number had been a more accurate number, the number we're coming forward with this year wouldn't look quite as shocking as it does. That's a bad number. That bad number is throwing a lot of other things off. So I believe the number that we're presenting to you this year is a reasonably good number. You know, I wish it was a little bit lower number, but if you want to have a medical center, if you want to run it properly and be able to provide the services that we have said that we want to provide, the number we're giving you this year should allow us to do that.
Questions on it, council? Go ahead, Councillor Ward.
I'll start it off again.
Yeah.
Sorry, for the new medical center, I would like to see some of the staffing requirements perhaps monitored. I don't know if we've had anybody over there, but I would like to see if the hours are properly allocated. That's a proper way of saying it.
One of the challenges in monitoring the hours right now is a significant amount of time is being spent on the rostering of the new patients. We're gonna be doing the same process in the summer when the next doctor comes. Once they're all rostered, and that work isn't there, then we'll have a much clearer picture of what is actually, how much work do we have over there. But right now, we have an added piece of work in there while we're getting these people rostered, so it's really. I think it's an important piece, but I want to make sure it's an apples to apples being looked at. Once this rostered piece of work is done, then we get into what does it look like to actually run the clinic as a regular medical clinic. So I just want to make sure everybody is clear on that piece.
If I may, one follow-up, so the additional staffing that's in this payroll cost, part of that is people phoning for rostering patients. Where's that line?
We have covered that off within the admin that is not part of the medical center. They're not doing that piece of work, we're doing that piece of work. The rostering piece of work they do is that once the person gets their form, they fill out their form, that form has to go back to the medical center. It takes approximately 15-20 minutes for each one of those forms, then be put onto the system so the patient, the person can actually then start making appointments because they're considered to be with that doctor. So that's the piece. I'm not talking about the phone calls at all.
Further questions? Deputy Member,
Just a comment under additional equipment due to adding positions. It's not a lot, it's $6,000, but I'm just thinking that that could be something that we might be able to really push on donations. A lot of medical clinics, hospitals, they rely on donations for equipment, so that was just I think that piece we can.
We did drop that down $2,600 from the previous budget. So we have we've already done there. Donations are fantastic. We're always happy when we get them. It is hard to account for the budget to know exactly what we're going to get for stuff like that. The doctors don't need certain things when she gets here. So that's, like I said, we did knock that one down. I hear what you're saying, and we're always, if there's an opportunity for donations, we're always looking for it. But we did need to have something in there for when she gets here.
Councillor Walsh, you had a question?
Yeah, if I can, through you, Mayor, and I'll like push on this one too, so it's back to the efficiency thing, and I'm better understanding it because a lot of it is being done still on roster. So when we get everybody up and running, you will be able to get, or we will all be able to get a really much better handle on what it takes to run the place.
So through there, once we actually get to the spot where we've got 3 full-time FTEs in there, all the rostering is done, then we can actually take a look and say, okay, how many hours of administrative work do we actually get? How many patients? If we don't want to know who, that's not our business.
No.
But how many people a week are we running through here? How many were scheduled? How many were just that all those kind of numbers will be available to us. But we are still in the intake. I mean, Dr. Hutchinson's been there since December. The amount of work, the number of people that we have got rostered from first part of December to the end of February is significant. It's between 800 and 1,000 people. And those are people who didn't previously have doctors, so they now have doctors. in my conversation with Dr. Hutchinson earlier this week, one of the things he was finding is because some of these people haven't had doctors in a number of years, they have a lot more work behind them that he has to do with them. And he's got people who haven't seen a doctor in a significant amount of time who are coming into him. He is finding he has extra work to do. Some of that does fly off to the other nursing staff or the admin staff because I need more on this, which is more appropriate for them to be doing. He gives them that. Again, hopefully, once we actually get through a cycle and we can say we're more like a regular medical clinic, we're not starting up, we're not rostering people left and right. We're running this as a regular clinic. We'll be able to do a deeper dive on that and be able to say, our 2 hours fit. Should we be closed Friday afternoon because nobody ever wants a Friday afternoon appointment or whatever it might be. We're not at that point yet because of the other stuff that's going on.
Okay, and I think that's, I'll still leave that as a challenge, when we get to that point, and I know we're not there yet, and I'm learning more about that, but when we get there. That will definitely be an exercise, so to make sure we're back.
One of the things that we'll be doing, and then we provide regular updates on what's going on over there. I would think that probably later this year, when we can say, okay, at least one of the doctors is going to roster now. We'll be able to report back to council and the work that's going on, and we try to be transparent in everything that we do, we let you know about, not who is being rostered, but how much is being done. We will continue to do that kind of work, and if there are questions that come up, I'm happy to address them the best way I can.
Did you have a question?
Just comment on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually in there yesterday. My mother has been rostered as a patient. I was dropping her forms off. There were probably 1, 2, 3 other people in there dropping forms off along with a handful of patients. They were busy and they check every sheet that comes in. Some of those sheets aren't filled out correctly. They deal with it right then. So it
That's a
probably
process.
maybe the timing was right that I was in there because I saw it for myself, to be honest. Yeah, just a comment.
Any other comments, questions? Carry on.
So next one we have is fire. So this one is $11,600 less than it was when you saw it in February. The other thing I'm gonna highlight with the fire budget is there were 2 pieces that were significant this year, which was the new truck and the master fire plan. These are both good pieces for the community. I realize that there's a hit this year, but in the long run, you will be glad that you have them. The one thing is the fire budget, you'll see it go back down next year, and it will be closer to what it was in 2024 than what it is in 2025. But again, the pieces that we're adding are good pieces for the community. We have a highway that runs through the middle of this community, and we have no master fire plan. That is not a good thing. So I recognize there was a cost that went with it. I do personally believe it is the best thing we can do for the community. Once we have it, it will help us with a lot of other stuff we can do. But like I said, the key messaging piece here is that the 2026 budget should be much closer to the 2024 budget than the 2025 budget.
Deputy Mayor Burke.
I just had a comment. We had our county meeting this morning and they were talking about tariffs and everything that's going on. Some of the municipalities have orders in for fire trucks and they are seeing their costs. It looks like at least 50% more because of where it is. So honestly, if we have done nothing right, it is order a fire truck and got it in
Because
before this happened, because there's, I think there'll be municipalities that have to back out of their deals, and that was just a quick conversation at county this morning, so, just throwing that out there, if there's a little bit of good news.
Councillor Ward.
Yes, thank you. And while I agree that the master fire plan, I think it will be a very good tool for the future. And I know that it has been awarded to a company that was recommended. I was just wondering the possibility and the legality of possibly extending that study over 2 years and 2 budgets, because it isn't a top priority. Is there any way that we can ask the company without getting into legal trouble, that would be something that would be half this year, completed into 2026?
Go ahead, Alan.
we can ask any questions we'd like, whether they're going to give us answers we like or not, is a different piece of the conversation.
Yeah.
But we were to push the issue and say, well, no, it has to be that way, we are not on the legal ground.
No, I understand that, but but it doesn't hurt to pose the question.
We can ask anybody, anything, and we can report back to council on the answers that we get on that one. I believe the chief actually, you had a meeting, so work has started on this. This is about, if I remember correctly, a 3 to 4 month project, but it's June-ish, they were gonna come back to us. That's the plan. So.
Yeah.
And again,
Okay, so it's already-
appreciate where you're coming from, but.
For some reason, I thought it was the fall, so I wasn't sure, yeah.
Okay. Any further questions on the fire department?
Okay, so police and conservation, the one that went up. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, I said I would discuss this one. So it is the only thing that we have on the list that went up, and it is the one thing that we have pretty limited, when I say limited, I mean no control over. The OPP board got back to us that they were gonna be, it's gonna be an extra 4,200 from what we had originally thought it was going to be. We have made that adjustment, the 4,200 is there. We don't really have a lot of options. The one piece that I will put out as a reminder, I know you guys knew this from the December meeting, but just as a reminder. Our OPP bill, the bills for all of the OPP across the province came in very high this fall.
Yes.
The province stepped up.
This year.
This, thank you, Mayor, I was trying to figure out how I could word this while giving them credit, but at the same time not giving them too much credit. They stepped up for this year. And there was an extra grant that was included for police services related to OPP. They made no commitment on whether that will be there for 2026 or not. If you're looking for the things that worry and concern me over the course of 2025, what the OPP bill looks like in 2026 is in my top 5. So more flagging that for everybody that we don't have any control over it. They come to us and basically say, this is the bill. They back up the stats on why that is. We're not what they do. We're not questioning the level of work they do. They do fantastic work. The OPP out of this attachment are all hardworking guys who do a great job, and I acknowledge that. But again, I just want to flag so that council understands we don't have any real control over this one. And based on what happened right at the end of last year, I am a little concerned for 2026.
Thank you, through you. Yeah, and I think that's something that perhaps the CAO and the clerk can keep in mind come, late summer, early fall. I think we gotta get on it, as will every municipality, that we have to really push lobbying efforts. We could do it now, but I think we need to hit it hard, and I'm sure we'll see that coming through. And then the other thing I just want to mention, and it's done for this year, but for 2026, the Conservation Authority, there's their base, what they have to do.
Yeah.
That we don't have any choice in, but then there's some extra fees that they add on, and we get to pick and choose what those are.
Yes.
We had never really looked too hard on that, and I meant to look back before the meeting, and I didn't, but there could be some savings there that we don't use. So I think that's something that we really need to take a look at for next year before they come and do the presentation. So I'm just wondering if you can, kind of keep in the back of your mind, it's totally better, what are those extra services we pay for?
Go ahead. Yeah, we can definitely do that. The only piece that I would caution on a little bit is that with some of those services, if they weren't being done by the company, Conservation Authority, then we have to look potentially someplace else. I don't think the option of not doing it is there, but we can explore that and just see what we can do and what we can't. The other piece I wanted to mention is from last fall, probably the guys who did the most work on the OPP and trying to get the extra was Damo.
Okay.
So making sure that we're
Pushing
involved with
Damo,
them
yeah.
and keeping on track with what they're doing, and which we do anyway, is in everybody's best interest, but they were the ones who really, I think, held the province and speak to the fire on that one. Councilor Wong.
Thank you, through you. Just one more thing on the Conservation Authority. Obviously, source water is.
Source water.
But the Conservation Authority, the mandated and non-mandated pieces.
Yes,
So the non-mandated also includes outreach programs.
Right.
And outreach programs wouldn't be something that we would have to try to duplicate. It would be, outreach would be to schools and things like that. Now, and I'm not saying that that's not important, but I think when you're looking at escalating budgets, you know, that would be something that would be a non-mandated thing from the Conservation Authority. That's just a comment only.
yes. Further questions? Carry on now.
Next one we get to is bylaw and animal control. So this is one where we had about a 3172 difference from last time less. So if you look at the 2024, we had spent, or we had budgeted $44,000 for it for 2025, we're at 41. I don't know, that's the realignment of some of the wages and how we're doing some things, it's the animal control contract and fees. I don't know, there's a lot of questions on this one, but it's a small piece, but again, every budget, we get our best to try and find some savings.
Councillor Wall.
Yes, thank you, through you. I did reach out to Ed, but I don't see him here today. And I did ask about the citywide software tablets. And his response back, staff are using the tablets and that if necessary, they use their phone for a lot of it already. And he said that they could delay the purchase of those tablets, that staff are not using them, was his reply back to me. I don't know if that's a bit of a savings there. And one other thing I was wondering about was dog licensing, because if you look at it, potential at 5,700, I think it should at least cover the cost of what we paid Northumberland Humane Society. Like, is there any way to make that a balance? And I know that would be increasing dog tanks, but I'm just wondering.
Go ahead,
Through you, Mayor. I know of some municipalities in Ontario where they've actually contracted out to people to go door to door.
Yeah.
Basically knock on your door and say, do you have a license for your pet? Usually the response they get is, I don't have a pet, what's that barking noise in the background, sir? So we could investigate something like that. I do know the number of communities they've done that in. It hasn't proven to be the most popular thing for the municipality to do, so there are pros and cons to it. There is a cost where I believe they get a percentage of the sales, so of that they do, so it wouldn't necessarily be something where we have to lay out the money first, they get a piece of the money, we don't get as much of that revenue then because we pay those guys to go out there and do that work. If that's something council wanted us to explore, we can go and take a look at that. We would bring a report back to council and say, this is what potentially is available, this is the potential pros and cons to it.
Right.
Decide if that was something you wanted to do. I think it's been a bit of a mixed bag in those municipalities.
I
Yeah.
can comment on that. Years ago, they used to do it here. The person went out house to house and don't get me wrong, they were really well doing their diligence and everything. They'd be back to that house 2 and 3 times because they could hear the dog barking in the house, but nobody would answer the door. Moral of that story is that back then the person got whatever the tag was half the tag. Then they switched and went on to electronically. Of course, bang, you've seen a bigger influx. Now you're not seeing that influx. It's on the downswing.
If I may,
Councillor
I'm
Ward.
sorry, that's not the question I was asking. The question I was asking was that, you know, we pay a certain amount to Northumberland.
Yes,
And it was to balance that, and I'm not proposing going door to door. I was,
I missed it.
no, but like a dog thing, fee is, I think, $15. I was just saying, shouldn't those two lines correlate? Or maybe I'm wrong, or balance? And the other part to that, you know, maybe even reach out to with the fire department and to have Save Your Pet campaign. It's just a different way of people going, yeah, I do have pets that the fire department would have to look at if there was, like, I'm not saying go door to door or any of that, and I don't want to put any more pressure, but I was just saying when the lines don't add up with what we do for a service and what we're taking in, then we have a deficit, so I don't know. Just for the animal control contract and everything, just thought they should balance, that's all.
Sure, 3 minutes. I can appreciate where you're coming from on that. The challenge is also always gonna be that they're not doing it to break even. They're
Right.
doing it to generate revenue on their end. Their revenue comes from having contracts with municipalities like us. So that's the break even piece. In theory, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily how it plays out because they're trying to cover up their costs and making up, they can do everything they do.
Well, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Burt?
Yeah, I guess just to follow up on that, basically, I think that's the law you're saying, the dog licenses need to go from 15 to 25 or something like that. Maybe,
Yeah, that's
17.
that exactly.
but, and then you get that balance, if people are paying $15 and complaining about it, are they gonna pay the $20 and you might.
And they have $2,
And
I know.
That's,
Yeah.
you know, that's what I'm thinking too, so I think this was
Okay, it's just,
not a,
yeah,
I agree.
it's a no-win.
Yeah, it is. a no-win. Yeah.
And through you, Mayor, one of the other pieces that makes it a little bit more challenging is we have a significant rural component to this municipality. So it's one thing if we're gonna, send somebody around town, that's really easy. If you want to slow down driveways.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best way to go. Next one, I have is building, which what you said is pretty much the easiest one because it is self-funded. So there really are no changes from the budget that you saw last time. If there are any questions, I will do my best to answer you or follow up with everything we see here.
Questions, Deputy Mayor Burt?
I think Councilor Ward mentioned it in the last one, the cost of the tablets.
Yeah.
Citywide software, we need it, can't change it. I just want to make sure tablets are well used and utilized, and again, it's finding that efficiency, and if they're using their phone and they don't need a tablet, that's just my comment there.
Okay. So, go ahead, Councilor Wells.
This one did come down, which is nice, because this is down, the whole bunch of reserves. As we have reserves, but we're pulling less out of that, and my calculation, we still have like $267,000 left in our reserves, so that will run us. Okay, maybe four before whatever happens possibly.
So even any savings we can have in that particular area does protect, help protect that reserve, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the one I suspect we'll have a fair bit of conversation around, so.
Go ahead.
So. This has the most significant change from the last budget, so we're approximately $850,000 change from last budget. And that is basically tied to 3 capital projects. So operating side of things, there are some small changes there, but that's not really where the big changes are, and this, the piece where we'll have to get into what council wants to do or not wants to do. But right now, we have taken the 2 road surface projects out of the capital budget. If council wants to change that, we're open with discussions for sure. Both of those projects come in at approximately a 5%. So if you want to put one of them back in, they're both 400 change, so you're looking at approximately a 5% for either one of them to go back in, and then if we didn't want the budget to increase, we need to find 5% worth of savings someplace else. We are also, there is the County Road 40 Wellington project that is on. I can give you a kind of big broad update. I will do my best to answer questions. There are a couple of questions I may have to tell you that I just can't answer that for you right now. So we are working with the developer to try and come up with a different way to manage the project. At the end of the day, the costing will all be the same, but that we're looking at potentially an approach where they pay up front, we give them a potential credit for it, and then the credit gets worked off as they do different things. There are a couple pieces that they would like to do that. Some of them we are agreeable with, some of them not. I had a very good conversation with the developer yesterday, and we both have committed to continue to try and work to come up with an agreement that benefits everybody. We are not there quite yet. We continue to work at it. He he is away next week. I am also away next week, but we're circling around the week of the 17th to try and say, okay, what, is there something we can do, or where is the bottom line on what we can do and what we can't do? And then we'll be able to give a better appreciation of just where that one is and what the impact on the budget is going to be.
Questions? On transportation, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Burke.
I guess I'll start, I've got a few questions.
Yes, go ahead, you can do.
Oh, I was just wondering, fuel and, diesel fuel, is that contract pricing, volume pricing, how does that work there?
Yeah, pretty much, we're in that county contract with repurchasing, so we pay the rack, as it changes daily, I get updated 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So right now, I think we buy super gas, sorry, we don't get super gas, no, it's something else. Our diesel fuel and our fuel prices are around 90 cents per day, so. We
Okay.
get a pretty good.
Okay.
You don't have to. You don't have to. So we get off the street, but we are looking at that's just a conversation with our insurance company now, so I think we get a better rate there.
Okay.
The rental equipment, a tank and pump for rent is about $11 a month, so it's not a huge cost to rent the equipment,
Mhm.
and I think we would see some savings, so we are looking at pretty gas, and it's just to make sure it's not gonna drive our insurance, obviously, but no, we do get a good purchasing, a really good purchasing.
Okay, thank you. Can I?
Yes, go ahead.
The part-time salary and wages, I guess, just kind of going off on, something, obviously, you guys have done a fantastic job with snow removal this year, and you've been working a lot of overtime. Has this township or the previous township you had ever looked at, bringing in contract snowplowers just on call? Is that a savings? Have you looked at that? I don't need numbers. I just, is that an option moving forward at some point?
I've never experienced that myself. I know the county does it quite regularly. A few of their reps, I think Baltimore and Tyler, they have contractors involved. Bill Hummer does have a couple of senior operators to get it over. It is a challenge to bring some part-time people there. It's just hard to get somebody, you know, a quality operator to take care of the equipment that's only there for a short period of time. I think that's some of the challenges. North Florida, where I was previously, they used to do the county roads up there with the township forces, and they would hire a few senior people. They struggle, they get the roads back to the county. Because they struggle with recruiting. And then a lot of times the township employees would have to step up higher because the part-time people would show up, so.
Okay. Okay.
Alan has a comment on that.
Through your mayor. When it works and you can contract it out, if there's a big enough area around you that enough people are interested, it can work really well. The challenge is the smaller the area it gets, the harder it is, because if we contract with somebody, they also have a contract with somebody else. And one time they get them first, it does get a little tricky to balance it out. The other thing is, this has probably been the worst winter that we've had in the last 10 years.
Easy.
We put a plan in place for next winter based on this winter. And all of a sudden we're paying people to be on standby or on call, and it turns out we had a not bad winter at all. And that's, again, which would be some few of the things, it's about finding that balance.
Deputy Mayor, I heard you had more questions.
Yeah, just a couple more. At the bottom of the first page, second page, I'm not sure what I'm on, the gravel resurfacing, as I travel a lot of gravel roads, we know what they're like right now. Is that enough? There's gonna be some major work on some of these roads. Sorry.
I'm gonna try to bring back, before every 4 years, we rotated. I kind of remember that was my understanding, so we're trying to bring it back to life. That's enough to do our first box, so we're gonna look at starting up in the north end. Doing all the concessions, and then touching up a few of our problem spots, just kind of The fourth line is an example.
Thank you.
We're gonna hit that with our, we'll hit that with the reinforcements. We have a big stockhouse, it's gonna be one of our first ones. We're gonna do a little bit extra work, there was some, geosynthetic down first. It lets the water up or down through it, but it won't let the water travel up through it, so we'll put the bot down first, and then we'll regravel it. The only other option would be just to dig up what's there, and that's just not economical. And I think we'll get a good base in the bot work, so that's, we're gonna go down for us to talk about.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there was nothing there, because.
Yeah, I think it's, it varies, so when we do the east end, of course, that's the biggest area, you'll see a higher ground here, because it's more kilometers, it's the farthest area in the pit, so maybe next year, potentially, if we move to the east end, you'll see a larger number. Each box kind of has its own pricing based on kilometers, as we work around, we're gonna try to get that warrior cycle locked in, and, everybody figure out what the 4 years, work well before.
Okay. And then, the ball grader, I know we're having, I'm sorry, it's there, I don't bring it up.
Through Mayor, I'd like to remove the update, last week it started to go through antifreeze. So we had a field technician diagnose it as to head gasket scenario for the piston sleeves, which will go some notorious for the piston sleeves. That grader 10 years ago had a new motor put in it.
Yeah.
The same thing, the piston sleeves went and they replaced the motor. We were lucky enough to get a motor with a grader to I train. And they only had 100 hours on, so it's relatively new engine. But here we are with the same problem. But I think at that point, it was covered under extended warranty, and it was estimated at $60,000 if we didn't pay for that motor. So I'm estimating that would higher this one. So
We are hoping to have a vote back later this week, Jeff, or early next week.
through American Grader just left from Mississauga today, so hopefully later this week.
So once we get that vote back, we will let council know what's going on with it, what our potential options are. I don't think any of them are going to be great options by any means. Jeff mentioned it, all graders are not,
I know.
they're known for this kind of thing. So, but as soon as we have a better handle on it, we will bring that back. That could potentially impact on what else you might want to do, but we should have that information in the next little while.
Yes.
I think I think a positive of that, if we're looking at that kind of expenditure this year, we were potentially looking at the greater next year, that would help 2 years. I mean, if we're putting a new engine in it, then we could shove that out. We were just kind of a thought process of discuss with the city and.
All right, Councilor Ward.
Yeah, thank you for you. Yeah, lots to think about. I guess really seeing what comes back, if it's a new motor and if it does extend the life, then, you know, perhaps the reserves, because one thing I know that is on the mind of a lot of people is the aid concession and that resurfacing. And has there been any more recent quotes, you know, of that cost? Because I know that there was an estimated cost of doing that is kind of off the table. Do we have any new costing of the aid concession of what it would cost?
Yeah, through there, I opened the hearing last week, had a chance to go back to it, and it looks like, currently about $25,000 to $30,000 less we do the 824, but I would caution council, it's based on desktop quantities, myself and the contractor, right? So if I would stick with the budget number that was provided originally, just for contingency. So I would leave that, I think it's 229 in the budget for the P line, if that was the case, I think it looks like around 205, I think. But again, if your gravel quantities are higher or the square footage is higher on the surface treatment, we're all just doing it on tape measurements until you actually get in the field and actually get tonnages and quantities. It's always important to have a little contingency there. So I think the day plan for consideration, I would still maintain the 229 just for contingency.
Go ahead.
I may have one follow-up with Jeff. What is your opinion on when and how it should be done? Like what, like, do you have, like, should it be, like, what's your opinion, your honest opinion on that project?
I think,
With our current situation, our current circumstances, I think I've always operated as, when times get tough, don't add anything new. You kind of smile more, you can maintain what you have and just keep operations afloat. So I think that's part of the consideration. I know there's and what's been on the table for a while. But it is a new asset. This spring, if it hits 15 degrees, all of a sudden it starts damping the frost out of the earth really fast, we might have surface treatment explode. You know, other roads that potentially weren't on the radar. I don't know, I think in tough times, I think would be my opinion that we just caution, let's just kind of work and maintain what we have and keep those critical assets. Again, my opinion,
No, that's the one that's the manager, the one
Yes.
in that department.
adding new stuff right now, like, yeah, I know it's not gonna get any cheaper, but it's, again, my opinion.
No, thank you.
It will get more expensive. Question for you on that, Jeff. The gravel that you use on those roads, is that brought in from the tender also, or is that gravel from our pits?
For the
Surface treatment.
through Mary, I put it in, both ways, the higher price is brought in, in case our gravel didn't pass specification, it's full of clay or something, it's waste.
Right.
So I
just figured you'd know what we have in our pits right now, a stockpile, is it stuff that we can,
I have a
okay,
and so there was about a $12,000 difference from purchasing the gravel or using a limestone aggregate that was brought in. The limestone aggregate assures your base, you know, it's good quality, it goes like concrete.
right,
There's no clay in it, so, I think it both ways, but I kind of went with the higher price to see what our gravel has to, and, if there's a bunch of clay, and I wouldn't use it as a structure.
Deputy Member,
Thank you, just a couple more questions. So on the 8th line, we all know what it's like if you haven't driven down there, do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if we were delaying that surface treatment, obviously there needs to be work done on that road to make it passable throughout the year. So that $80,000 or no, wherever it is with the gravel and work. Where would that land? Would that up that number? Okay, I'm just trying to figure out where, if we drop the 200 and, sorry, I can't read it, 229,000, obviously it's going to need some more.
Through Mayor, I think that's important, if we don't move forward with the surface issue, we would still continue to, we would do all the drainage, we would take the job as far as we could before we got there, and I never really did our time so much there, with the ditching, if nothing else, the road gets ditched, and which is important as well.
Yeah, sure.
Those costs are strictly materials,
Okay.
not so much our labor, and that, so
Okay.
regardless of what happens this year, we would still go mobilize the aid plan, we would get it as far advanced as we could.
Okay.
We just stop at $1 billion headings just before.
Okay, good. And then I promise my last one. The Highway 7 corridor project, we did a delegation at Roma. And we were asking for funding, half of that, and I know that hasn't gone anywhere, but I didn't see, is that in here somewhere?
go ahead, Alan.
The grant that they had talked to us about, so they talked to us about it on Sunday, they called the election about a week later, they announced the grant, and they called the election about a week later, and they then sent out a notification, everything was dead. So that grant doesn't currently exist.
Okay,
We expect that the province will come back with something later this year. And then we'll take a look at it, but without even knowing what that's, it's probably gonna be pretty close to what they had put out just before the election. But until we know what that is, and that we get included in for because the program wasn't there.
okay, so, but if the MTO is going to do that work. And the idea was that we would do that infrastructure work at the same time, so we wouldn't have the data, that's not going to happen.
No, there is not anything in the budget for that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Council Walsh,
Through you, Mayor. Jeff, thank you very much. I think we've all looked at this one, it's a big one. And it comes down to the 8th line. I think it does come down to the 8th lines. I really appreciate your insight because you're on the roads every day. So my thought was we need to make this happen, but. To your point, we're coming off of winter like we've never had before. We have a lot of roads that may need a lot of. Help this year. Still sounds like you would still be able to do some prep work on the eighth line to get it ready, even though we're to defer it every one more year, so. I appreciate that insight, because this is the one I struggle with the most, because that road is a busy road. North Fair weekend, that road is significantly busy. But I appreciate your insight into, we have a lot of other things going on, we've got some roads that, we've got material coming up that we don't want, so. We got a lot of tender and care plus we do this year, but maybe letting this one off. Doesn't make sense as much as I hate to see it sit one more year knowing that it's probably gonna go up. But maybe it is the right decision, so I appreciate your insights.
I hate seeing it going off myself too, also, Walt, it just seems you get further and further and further behind on roads. No tar and chip, or no tar and chip this year on roads. Our roads are an absolute mess out in the township, I agree 100%. Until we can figure a way of getting it done a lot cheaper. Our hands are sort of tied. Go ahead, Councilor Ward.
Sorry, just bringing up what Deputy Mayor Burt was saying about the Highway 7 corridor. So if, like, that project was costed at about 263, if I remember, was that a
Three.
price? Yeah,
I just want to separate the
Yeah.
work that's being done by the province. We're not involved with that work.
no, I understand that, but I mean,
So-
the thing is, if we don't do it at the same time, and we have to do that work, we have to rip that road up.
We've been doing that work, with the age of some of the infrastructure underneath that road. That's why we went to Roma and we
Yeah.
asked the Ministry of Infrastructure to help us with that. Their response was, well, there's this new grant that's coming out.
Yes,
They announced it the next day. A week later, it got pulled because of the election. So that work is still, from the province side, is still scheduled to go ahead. We're gonna have to really watch it. If there's an opportunity to try and get, if they come back fast enough with the grant opportunity, we will get in there, we will apply for it as quickly as we can. We may have to come back to council at that point and say, yes, we've been approved for it, but our portion, which we haven't budgeted for at this time, is going to be this much. How do we want to account for that? As soon as we know what that number is, we can start giving you options to say, as much as it pains me to say it, does it come out of reserves, or is there a different something we don't do instead?
if I remember correctly, MVP David Pacini went into that with us.
Yes.
And I was wondering, is there any way to reach out to him, maybe to accelerate the process, or just say, this is happening, can we, get some more support that way?
Through you, Mayor, we can definitely reach out for him,
Mhm.
but he won't have a lot of sway until, if they're not finished, they have to appoint all ministers, they have to go back and see, okay, where were they?
Yeah.
If today is the first part of March, it will be probably at least until the end of April, first of May, before we see stuff come out from them. And there isn't even anybody really to advocate with right now, because there isn't, the same minister of infrastructure, it will probably be the same person, but officially she's not there.
Right, thank you.
And even if the MTO does go along with that, we might have to take a hard look at touching reserves to do that.
That's
Reason being is that asphalt that's on Highway 7 is a lot more expensive. We've seen the cost in front of Rob Urban's place. It was just ferocious.
Well, through you, I mean, part of what we said to the Ministry of Infrastructure was, Adam, beginning of this plan, as the water guy over there, we had one where they were doing some work, and because of the work that was done, I want to say it cost us $60,000 or $70,000.
Robert.
Fix one, the potential on this one is there are double-digit ones.
Yeah.
If there's a way that makes, again, as we explained to the ministry, it makes perfect sense to be doing this at this time. But unless they're going to be able to give us a piece, we were hoping they were going to give us all, but they didn't, they like that idea. But unless they're giving us a significant piece of it, there's not a way we can take that on by ourselves.
Deputy Member,
I know what the answer's gonna be to this, but turning it around. because of the election, because there's no Ministry of Infrastructure, because it's got delayed. Is there, I know the answer, it's too bad, we can't go to the MTO and say, can you delay this project for a year? Is there any way to do that?
So, through you, Mayor, we can go back and have, as I said earlier, we can always go back and have conversations. They're in the planning stage, the first thing they're gonna say is, it'll cost us that much more money if we do it one more year. And I can't tell them they're wrong on that because they're 100% right, it will be. But we can go back and say, you know, we were in the process, we expected to apply for this grant, the province had just announced. Can you help us out at all? It never hurts us to have a conversation. But we don't have a lot of leverage at all to say, well, no, stay off our roads, because they're not really our roads that are the richer ones.
So I think that would be a good idea.
Adam?
Premier, the MTO had a budget, they're cutting both in 28 to the west there to Norwood in 2025. And then they pushed the portion to Norwood in 2026 for us already. They really won't do the road for us to look at doing this project.
Right.
So they have pushed it to 2026.
Just the portion to Norwood.
Oh,
That's the part we.
that's what I wanted.
Yes, thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you.
The deputy mayor says, no, the minister of transportation says, no.
Hey, yes, that's great.
I don't recall you mentioning that to me.
Councillor Ward, you had a question?
No, that was.
That just answered?
That answered the question. Thank you.
Councillor Hodge-Greaves, did you have a question?
No, I was making sure you, so.
Okay, very good. Carry on.
Transportation. Environment, so under the environment, there was a small savings from our previous budget presentation, just under 2,000 to about 5,700. There was some additional well monitoring, not no monitoring, that would be a different thing. So there was some additional monitoring that we needed to do with some wells. There were 10 hours of student time up at the landfill so that we could have 2 staff there because we had some challenges up there and we felt it was better if at all possible to have them there. There's some additional sampling and consultation and not massive changes from what we saw previously that was distributed.
Councillor Ward?
Sorry, I'll go, I'm sorry about this. I wondered if there might have to be a service reduction, at the land transfer station and look at scaling back the hours for the student. I know that we had increased them last year because we wanted to have more service, like we recently did that, I believe. But, you know, maybe it's time that we need to maybe scale back this year and make sure it's well advertised on social media that we maybe scale back on the service at the land transfer site.
I'll cover a piece of that off and I'll probably ask you to come to this, but that is definitely something that we can look at. The challenge on that one is when we scale back, we also have to, any hours we're not open, that's also lost. It saves us money, but it costs us revenue. And trying to make sure then, about a third or fourth time you're striking that balance, that's the piece that we have to always kind of watch. We don't always have a lot of control of the revenue that comes in. People come when they want to come, if we're open and then do it. We can publicize all kinds that we change the hours. I guarantee you at some point you will get phone calls that it's always been open on months. So just to put that out there for you. Jeff, anything you want to cover up on that?
I think, Mayor, I think you visited this. I want to say 5 years ago, it was that we looked at potentially closing on the Mondays because a lot of Mondays we already generated in the winter time, mostly winter hours. I know we did cover our costs in the winter time. At that point in time, council didn't have the flavor or appetite to reduce the services, so we lowered the hours. It used to be open on Mondays, the same as a Saturday, because it was 8 till 2. We scaled it back to 8 till noon at that point. Again, the council didn't have the flavor to close it completely in the winter time. And then we added the Wednesday at that same point. We had to have a letter open to the district office anyways, because whenever we adjust the hours, we have to contact them with the CP.
They have to be in the loop on hours adjustments. It's not just something that we can do. And they won't say no, but we have to go through the process. So we figured while we had the letter open, we added the Wednesday afternoon, so people that struggle to get there for work or whatnot. So that's kind of how that transpired. We talked about service reductions before, but then at that time, it wasn't in favor, so. And that's how we ended up with the extra Wednesdays in the summer. So, just a bit of history, I think it was previous council, before a lot of council, time here now, so.
Council Walsh.
Through Mayor, so just a quick question, Jeff. If we were to assess busy versus not busy, is Monday busy? Is it honestly worthwhile having somebody there from, I think it's children kind of thing?
Through the mayor, we did look at Mondays right off and going into this budget. I think we generated $9,000 in revenue on all the Mondays for the year. And it cost us about a little over $4,000. So we paid for it, and then some, like Alan says, it's kind of a double-edged sword. And we did generate $4,000 budget for revenue on the Mondays. So I think, yes, winters are probably slower, but the busier season makes up for it. Yeah,
Because I think for me, the flip side to it is we might have some stuff dumped all over the site again. That becomes, you know, you could say, sure, let's just cut Monday out. Well, then we're gonna be picking up on side roads all over the place because.
Through you, just about every municipality in Ontario that I know of that has made changes with that, they've ended up with that exact problem, Councillor, where somebody shows up with the dump's not open, they don't take the stuff home, they take it to the side road. And I hate this happens, but I know that it does.
mayor's one.
Pardon me?
The mayor's one.
Yeah, they take it to the side road, and then it becomes, we end up going and collecting it's more, not only that where it's supposed to be, we're the guys who have to go and clean it up.
And again, looking at your figures, Jeff, we're generating 9K, it's costing, like, we're
make it.
we're not losing. So I'm more of the fact, leave it, because I don't wanna have you guys or us getting a call with somebody's just company on the side of this. My God.
Further questions? Do you have something else, Jeff? Go ahead.
Just to swing back to the student, we looked at the student this year, I guess some safety concerns that we kind of be by ourselves up there, that's why we thought it was best to have a person up there. Especially in the evenings on the Wednesdays during the summer, but it was more reasonable to have a student involved, we might get some funding for it rather than one of our full-time staff, so that was kind of the theory of the student there, just mostly with some, just a safety concern, and closing up the dark.
Through your mayor,
Add to that.
just to build on what Jeff said, there is enough work to keep them busy. They're not just standing around keeping an eye on each other. There is work that they are doing there.
Deputy Member.
Yeah, and just a comment, they do a great job. You know, they're professional, it's clean up there, it's well looked after, so certainly no complaints there, but I guess, you talked about the Mondays. What are the hours in the summer or the Wednesdays? What are those hours and when do they start and when do they end? I'm just wondering if we tweaked that away. Savings isn't gonna be great, but I'm just wondering if we tweaked the Wednesday.
Mayor, it's four to 6:30 or 7 or 5 to 7.
I think 4 to 7:30.
Yeah.
4:30 to 7:30.
4:30 to 7.
3 hours.
Yeah,
The sign knows,
And-
sign knows.
From when to when?
May to one.
I'm just wondering if we tighten that up.
If you were to tighten it up, I would go not May. Maybe go to the end of June. But go a little longer. And the reason I say that is if I had the complaints last year of residents that they're working in their flower beds in the weekend on a Sunday or whatever, or on a Monday, whatever. At least they can go up there Wednesday night, but then we shut down in October and they can't finish up. At the end of the year, the ones that are into doing their flower beds
We
indoors.
should have your green waste.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead, Jeff.
Mayor, I think, we kind of, are really careful with the timing, just that there's no lighting up there.
Right,
And that's, so I mean, if
That-
we're gonna go longer, I think we would follow it
okay,
earlier.
yeah.
You know, maybe not 6:30, maybe 5:30 or whatever.
I don't wanna run power up there, so we'll leave it as it is.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, 4 to 7, start later? Like start later in the year, just a thought.
Councilor Hodgkins,
Through you, Mayor, would that, to, Jeff, to alter it from 4 to 7, and does that require the letter being open to the MECP, the adjustment of the hours as well?
Through you, Mayor, yeah, we've had to just write a letter to the district office, and there would be no pushback, it's just part of the process, and not a big deal, but it's just, I don't. 99.8% no pushback.
right,
Be careful what you say.
further comments? Questions?
The next one we have is recreation. So one of the. Oh, well, I think this is another one of the big ones where from what was brought forward in February. What the $243,000, almost $244,000 less. So some of the impacts on that are, we know that within the local area, there have been a number, both on the Peterborough side and on the other side of other arenas that have come on board. So we have kind of pulled back a little bit on our revenue because we don't know at this point what that impact is going to be. We had a 70% increase in insurance costs that we had to account for as well. So it's back to our insurance discussion earlier, that hurts us in a lot of ways. The machine for the floor was approved. That is going to be a reserve, so there is no impact on the tax reserve on that one. The splash pad scheme was pre-approved, and that was something that we needed to have in the splash pad in this year. So of the 243, almost 244,000, most of that is from deferred capital projects. So a piece I just wrote there is that with a number, we have a building that is 20 years old. Right now, we have about $20,000 in their general. Projects that he's got that we'd like to see go forward, but right now, he pulled out of the budget. So are there any questions on this one?
Where do you want to start? I talked to Seamus about some of the things in the recreation department. I'll use the canteen right off the bat. I think we should have more slot machines, put your money in, get your pop, get your vending machines. There's a $21,000 loss in there. If it was more neutral based, it maybe lease the space out. I'd far sooner have money in hand than not have money in hand. When you're losing money, it's not a good thing. Go ahead, Adam.
Pretty much every municipality of our size across Ontario has struggled with this issue.
Yes.
We are not, we're tackling it right now, and it's going to be tackled, but we are not the first to get here by any means. And really, at the end of the day, there are two potential outcomes. You either accept that the canteen is going to cost X number of dollars a year. There are none that I'm aware of that are actually making revenue. Or the other part, if you decide that that is not something we want to accept, and I'm not a big fan of the next one, I will do my job, which is to make you aware of all your options, that is to close the canteen. A number, if you go around to a number of municipalities this side, as a guy who has spent more than his fair time in arenas because of my kid. It is not that unusual for a municipality this size, or any of that size, that there is no canteen. Not a big fan of it, I don't like it.
No, I don't like that either.
It provides jobs for the high school students, it provides meals for parents who are with their kids all over the place, and in our particular community, there's not a lot of other options. So again, I am not endorsing it by any means, I am making you aware, but it really is one of those ones you either accept it, here's what the loss is going to be, and that's just part of the deal of having it, or you say, no, we're not going to accept that, and you close it.
Seamus?
So through your mayor, Lean and I have already had a discussion, but currently right now, or similar to the transfer station, we provide a service, we're open 7 days. We've already thought of the ideas that maybe you look at, unfortunately, Mondays are slower nights, maybe you don't open, maybe you don't hold like that. So typically, this past Monday or last Monday, we did $93 in sales on Monday, staff worked 3 hours, that's sales. So moving forward, we have thought of ways that, do you go on slow practice nights? Do you not open? Do you only open on busy nights? Do you be upfront with them and say, hey, unfortunately, maybe it's only twice a month on Mondays, maybe it's once, maybe. We have a couple other slower nights this year due to the fact that from games versus previous year there were games, so maybe 5 to 7 nights a week turns into 5. Maybe we've also discussed pulling back options of fries, if you're one of your best profit margins, you just want the best rate of fries, maybe you don't offer alternative onion rings. On that too, this year, we have a lot of older staff that are students that hopefully you can get for multiple years, so next year you're not spending as much time training. But ball hockey, maybe you just say, unfortunately, up front, we're providing a vending machine, well, therefore you cut wages, you're not able to order as many supplies, so I think personally, the best option would be taking it another year, seeing how much we could potentially be more efficient. Because my fear is, yes, if we were to tender it out, but then we don't control that. What happens if something goes, what happens if they're never there? What happens if, whatever they're doing, or what happens if they all of a sudden say, hey, we're only paying 1,000 a month, but then 5,000 a month turns into, now you're chasing them after. So I think the best bet would be, we find efficiencies in-house, so maybe it's again simple, just we're open weekends, we're open Fridays if it's game, maybe if it's another busy night, slower nights. You cut back, because the big thing, going back to Monday is staff open for half hour, say you get everything ready, you're open. You're an hour busy on Monday, you're at half hour cleaning. Because we have to do a 3-hour minimum. Monday nights we do cleaning, restock. But that's the other thing, maybe on those nights that if you're not gonna be really busy for the whole 3 hours, you can just say, hey, what, we're not open.
If you're thinking on doing that for a year, I still want the vending machines there.
Yes,
Another part of that, your ATM machine over there, that is not owned by us.
3 years, so no, I haven't looked at it. No, it's not, but I have to look at that, because I'm pretty sure I'm getting a great deal of who we heard.
I can guarantee you're not getting a great deal. I know the Norwood Legion put one in their place, they bought it themselves, they stocked, fill it themselves. It was paid for in 6 months, so you know what the banks are making. It's unbelievable, the funds you can make from.
Just the, doesn't matter, so we just had a bar event that, I believe last Tuesday, 2,400 cash and put the balance 2,500 and you're giving money that's going. Because of the cash bar, you've already 2,000, so you've already got 2,000.
And it would be us getting the $3 every time they use that machine. Go ahead, Councilor Walsh.
Yeah, Chairman, so I chat with you a lot on this one. I'm of the same feeling as I don't want to lose the booth. I think it provides so. I look at the Michigan-Law, or unit that's built in Peterborough, does not have a booth in it. There's been a lot of pushback already on the council was very upset that it didn't have one in there. We've had complaints from people in town and out of town. Where I like the way you're thinking of, let's look at efficiency. So the night that we say, and you know these nights better than I do, but nights that we have practices only, it's literally our own parents in and out. I'm sorry, we're not open. But on nights that we have games, makes sense to have staff there. Nights we have games that, you know, what at the end of the second period, we're closing it in the second period. We're not going to wait around till after the game because we're probably not going to get it. I think it was midget juvenile or the older age groups, the U19 and U21 now. They probably don't buy a lot after the game. They're going elsewhere for refreshments, but I just think if we can find efficiencies that way, I like the idea, you know what, maybe it's French fries only, there's no onion rings. So just try and drive efficiencies wherever we can. And instead of that being a minus 20K loss, it's close to break even. That, in my mind, that would be us. Because we're still providing streams.
This year, there's, I believe it's Monday, Wednesday, very slow. Like on that though, the 8,000 roughly concession or vending machine, pop machine factors into that too. But yes, we're aware that moving forward that on weekends you have a Peterborough. Well, more than likely if a Peterborough is coming first thing in the morning, they're probably stopping and getting something versus getting something versus if you're local, maybe you get up, got the kids ready, you have time for breakfast and then you're having something in the concession.
Yeah, I just think, and again, you know the users, you know what times are busy, not busy, just try and find the right efficiency wherever you can, and to shrink that number that we can become as close to breaking as possible. We may still lose a little bit, but better than minus 21K.
Councillor Hotchkiss.
Yeah, I would, as a regular member of a user group that's probably gonna be affected, that's fine, I understand efficiencies, but going to the ATM as well, I understand that it sounds. In one, the problem with owning equipment, if we were to purchase an ATM, is that we own the equipment, and then if it breaks, then we have to fix it, as opposed to. Perhaps looking at a better option where it's a better contract services, I think it's always, it seems easier not to rent, to buy. But then when you buy, you own it and you own an asset and it adds, I think there is costs that it ends up adding, and not immediately, it's the 6-7 years down the line when it's breaking, and then you're like, oh, we should have just contracted. So I think there's always a bit of that with just buying something new. That seems, it could be a great winner, but then if you get a lemon of if you got the Volvo of ATM machines, it might not work out, but I agree that we should be looking for efficiencies in the canteen, reducing the amount of food options would be a nice way too, but it does have the best fries in the area, and want to keep that actually.
Go ahead.
So through you, just to follow up on that, so our Pepsi representative last week, all our pops, we're putting up again at 25 cents. But anytime we're at other facilities, like Nolan and I were at Misty Law today, we always stop and check the vending machines, just to be curious, because it's like, if here's their number that's smaller facility than us and less used, if they're selling the cost of $5, and we're selling them for $2.75, obviously we can increase.
Go ahead, Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thank you through you. Yeah, I think we need to find the efficiencies, but I'm also like really confused about the way that the numbers were plugged in for the concession revenue. The estimate for 2024, it was 107,000. And then if you look over to, this is for revenue, the budget for 2025 for revenue coming in is estimated at 80,000. And then if you go down to the cost to fill up the for canteen supplies, they don't even add up. I'm sorry, I don't know, were you looking at previous invoices to try to budget that, or where did those numbers come from for buying the supplies?
You go ahead.
Mayor, so the reason we actually did 107 this year, the reason we put it at 80 is, again, due to the fact that actually they're proposing 4 days, maybe they don't go. Maybe we don't have as many tournaments moving forward, at tournaments in your days where on a good tournament day, you're doing like 2,000 cents. So that's kind of the way that potentially that based off this year, we put it with that number. The expenses, in my opinion, if we're spending $60,000 on supplies, we better be bringing more than $60,000 in revenue, because then you're selling for less than what you bought. So on that, that's why that number is higher. Obviously, again, with the uncertainty of how much the new Michigan law, the Sunny Life Sport Wellness Center, that maybe if we're not open as long, maybe if we don't put the ice in as early, maybe if there's multiple events, maybe a block, maybe if you don't close it all. The Jamboree, we were open, but that's why we put it at that 80 number based off. We projected 60 this year, therefore we projected 20 more than we projected. I understand we did bring in 107, but with the concession, and then there's no guarantees years to year based off, maybe Norwood has less teams. Maybe.
Yeah, I know.
As much, therefore we're not.
I know, but you didn't reflect that in like a salary or a decrease in hours of people working. And so, you made the number even wider in what the loss would be by not creating what the actual amount that you take in from the concession. I'm sorry, that was just a comment on that. I was, if I
Go ahead.
I don't know if we've talked about the canteen enough. I think we all want.
Canteen, I think we've talked
Yeah.
that.
But the utility overages, Can you give me a rundown why they were all so much over, like for the gas, the electric and the water service, the water billing, was 19,000.
Go ahead, Seamus.
So through your of water was due to the fact that, this summer when we put in a new condenser, they did a passivation test, so therefore. We were initially told that it was gonna be 2 months, it
Yeah.
turned out to be 3 months, so for 3 months, the condenser water pump was on manually, on automatic. And the drain was partly open, so water was constantly circulating through it. That's due that we had to pass the passivation test to the condenser.
And so we had to have it on all that time.
So it had to put on manually because when it's not manually, the pump only runs from certain times from the plants. But because it was a new condenser and it only happens because it was a new condenser,
Right.
part of it is they have to make sure passivation. So that's the big thing on that is for 3 months, water would have been constantly going through, like typically in a day, our water meter to refrigeration rate goes up 0.8 to point, maybe a whole one. During the passivation, it was going up like 50, 60 a day. So obviously, now that that's passed in 2025, that number should be more down to normal, which we projected to increase the water cost from 5 instead of what we actually spent with 8.9.
And would any of that water bill have been the outdoor rink?
So through your mayor this year,
Not this year, but if it's in part of last year, right?
through your mayor last year, maybe a portion, most of the
No.
fire department filled it. And then I don't know if the committee even ever used it, if they did, it was very minimal.
Right. Deputy Mayor Bird.
Thank you. So I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement of finding a lot of efficiencies as we go through the year in various operations. And I think part of that is reporting back to council. This is what we had in 2024. These are the efficiencies we're finding in 2025. And don't wait. It can start today. And really, you know, reporting back and finding those. I think that's important. When it comes down to capital, I'm pretty sure we're all agreeable that the new truck is out. Sorry, Seamus. But then the dehumidifier and the other one is the laundry rooftop unit.
AC.
Yeah, the AC unit. Can you speak to those? It just that, especially the AC unit, I'm just wondering if there's cheaper ideas or something there. And that the dehumidifier, again, it's probably needed, but can you just speak to those two items?
So pretty rare, I started with the dehumidifiers first, so that's, we currently have 2. This project that has been around since the previous manager was conceded with COVID and other stuff, it kept getting pushed off. So we have 2 at the Olympia end of the arena. Having 2 at the same end is not ideal for the fact that the lobby end tends not to have as much air circulation. So desiccate is in there, and with it continuing to get pushed off, that's why it's in there this year. So this, by replacing one, it's gonna do a better job than the current one there, and also. There was another option, by paying $35,000 more, you could have ran electrical, built a stand and put it in the lobby end, but do the lobby end, we don't have a lot of room. So that's the biggest issue is if one were to go down, like I know there's some other facilities that if one go down, yes, you can still operate, it's not as ideal, and then the biggest issue is when we put in the case. And potentially too, on warmer days, so they're almost fortunate enough this year that we bought one of those industrial fans for over a month. Put it up by the wardroom, so air flow will continually go, we had to shut it off at night, because it was loud for the user groups. But this year, when we were putting in the ice, it was the worst year, like, if we would have showed you a picture of what the lobby and blue line, the cold line, it looked like land. Because the condensation goes from the roof, and then it forms the bumps. And then you can actually, that's why you'll notice, if you see some of the ice, there's the gray spots. The water constantly dripping off that it's got away. Part of that's due to the roof. Right, you get more water available, the condensation, so that's the desiccate. And again, if it were to be pushed off, it's something that eventually, whether it's not this year, next year needs to be done. Lobby rooftop unit, so to clarify that, because we had some questions on that. The Millennium Room has 2 units. Those are fine. They do them away. So the dining room has AC. The lobby roof coming in is the lobby and the washroom staff offices. That's the one right now, that currently the heat works, the AC doesn't. So that's gonna really affect, really, in the winter, or not in the winter, in the summer, any user, whether it's wall hockey, whether it's a township event, whether it's staff, whether it's people that are at the skate park coming in to take a little breather or cool off. Briefly after the first round, a couple of you did mention questions, I briefly reached out to one of the contractors that gave us this quote and asked about, I believe it was a pump. And he briefly mentioned that could be an option, but it's tough when it's on the roof, because sometimes when snow, when I get to, we can for sure put backfill and realize there's other alternatives that maybe would be more cost efficient. But briefly talking to him, it was more of a, wasn't a eyes light up, like that's a great idea, it was more of a, hey, that could be an idea that you also could potentially have other issues come along.
Councilor Walsh.
Chairman, just to clarify, I think I asked this, but so the two dehumidifiers there. If one of them were to go down, could that have an impact on ice revenue being generated because you would be able to actually skate on the ice?
So through your mayor, there's been a couple times with power outages that stuff's kind of trip. And you do notice that like, one of them's only one of them's already on your base that's warmer, you might notice more fog, you might notice more bumps on the ice. Obviously, once the Olympic goes around, it smooths it out, but on days that really compensation of that, you might notice strips again before the Olympia floods 50 moment. Like what we do typically, right now, again, due to the compensation, but also due to the leaky roof, is right now when it's snow melting the last week, we have to go for the first wrinkle a day and scrape off the bumps. Due to safety reasons, obviously, again, more times than not, it can make it, if you shave off in the morning, you can make it through the rest of the night, but there's sometimes that if you don't go back out when you're flying the next one, you notice lots of people helping it. But yes, you can still operate, but then it's, again, you might notice more foggy days, you're really in trouble if the other one happens to turn it down. But the biggest thing is, if the dehumidifiers are only on when the plant. The second we shut the plant off, start taking out the ice, they get shut off, because we are fortunate enough to have 2 fans above the roof floor.
And Councilor Walsh.
Just a follow-up question, now maybe this is more for you, so. Just let me play this through, we decide to not move forward with the dehumidifier, but we get halfway through the season and it dies. And we really need it, because it's also now impacting ice revenue. What happens then?
Go ahead.
So through that, as of right now, it is not in the budget.
Correct.
I want to be real clear on
Yeah.
that. If something happened, any piece of it.
Right, yeah, this is just-
Was
it's-
all it works,
yeah.
was the grader,
Yeah.
plow, it's wet, and it's the dehumidifier. Because they're always all states to break down in the middle of the season. If any of that happens, what we would do is we would bring a report to council, we would make everybody aware of it. This is what's happened, this is what we believe it means, these are potential solutions. And then, I think specifics, if I could say one of those solutions, well, I can know this, but that's how the process is supposed to, we would never go out and say, oh, we spent $50,000 to fix that, oh, by the way, council, good news, we spent 50,000, that's not how it works.
No.
If it was something that would be less than $10,000, where it would be myself and treasurer signing authority, we would potentially do that and then advise. But most of these big ticket items, $10,000 is a lot of money, except that it's not a lot of money. So anything like that, whatever the piece of equipment is, I would also come back, options would be provided, direction would be provided by council, and then we would implement that reduction.
Sorry, we'll just follow up. And the reality is, it's gonna have to come from a reserve. Probably.
You know, like our,
In there, yeah, but in reality, if money is in that reserve, then
That's what
it can come from that reserve. If not, then we have another discussion.
Okay.
Councilor Hodge, please.
So, through your, we replaced our, was the Millennium Room roof done recently? I feel, Now, but the arena's leaking?
Go ahead.
Through your various, so 2024, the money part, part of the line.
Okay.
Excluding the fitness center, because it's 22 years old, was replaced. So yes, well, you brought this up, I'll mention this, because this is gonna get brought up, so yes, the arena roof. Does appear to leak, so our envision is, obviously, we realize it's gonna be a substantial amount of money. So by putting some money over this year in 2025, we looked at someone into. That's a roofer, but I'm not a roofer, that would be able to say, maybe it's only a quarter, maybe it's 3/4, but the biggest concern we have to watch is. The solar panels, I believe, I have to go back and check, but I believe in the contract. It's set up and maybe a one-time disconnect, so what that means is. If next year, if someone comes up and says, hey, you know what, it's only 25% of the roof that needs to be done. They would do that, they would remove their solar panels. And repair the roof. If it's only a one-time disconnect, when we replace the other 75%, we're on the hook, which is very cheap to remove all the solar panels, to do the roof, to put them back on. Whether, once you do the roof, you look to put them back on, that's, after the roof's done, what has to be discussed. But that's what we're envisioning, is rather than hitting you with the total numbers, we put a little aside.
Yeah.
Obviously, by putting money aside, if the dehumidifier and other projects that didn't make it this year, we're gonna fail, we can fix that, but knowing for 2026, knowing maybe they say, hey, yes, it leaks a little, but you can get 2 more years on it. Or, hey, it's leaking, but in another year, it's gonna be leaking everywhere. It is pretty much a dot on the next shot. Is where the main reason has a couple of those things.
Okay.
Councilor,
Like I think, you know, we're putting money into reserves, I think I sent some things to you about that. But I really think that we do need to have estimates on the cost too. Like when we are putting money into replacing it and the one-time disconnect, you still have to have like, do we have a cost number?
I can tell you that Havelock's roof was 950,000 last year. They left it a year and it's now 1.2
For the roof.
for the roof.
So through that, what I was going to say is. I think getting estimates is great. The challenge is unless we act on within that 3 to 6 month period. Once upon a time, we could get an estimate and 12 months later, we're still pretty close.
Yeah.
Ever since COVID, anything more than 3 to 6 months on an estimate. You can add another 20%. I don't think it's right, but unfortunately, I've seen it happen too many times now since then. So that. While they're a great start, they give us a neighborhood, that neighborhood can move along really quickly if we're not careful.
No, I understand that, but I mean, I had no idea that the roof would be 1.2 million, like that, sorry, for me, that's
Shocker.
yeah, that's a shock, and for us as council that do not do roofs. Or have no, mindset of what that would cost to replace that, that asset, I guess. We need to know like even ballpark figures so that we are not surprised when it costs 1.5 million.
Exactly. Jordan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, just to add, I think Mayor Havelock received a grant for that roof. Really, if the entire roof needs to be done, we'll never have the money saved to pay for it, so. I think it is good to put some money away, even if it is potentially 25% for our grant portion to cover it, or as Sharon's mentioned, maybe partial repair. That's what the examination had.
Alan?
So through you, Mayor, and the treasurer pretty much took exactly what it was the same way. We would never imagine that we would be able to fund a product that, we would always be looking for some kind of something in the problem. The province does come knocking sometimes when they want to make a splash and do a rec project, and we've had conversations with them in 2024. We will continue to always be looking for those kind of opportunities. But if we can have a little bit in our back pocket, knowing that we're still looking for those opportunities, hopefully that sets us up better.
No, I'm all for shovel ready projects, that's for sure,
Yeah.
to make sure that we have like reserves in hand. Are there more questions on the roof?
Go
No, just a comment,
Okay.
about the assets, that's where this asset management plan comes in as far as the numbers go. And I'm sure that will be a big part of it, so that was just a comment.
And you had something else?
Well, I was just, anybody else had any?
Anything else on the, go ahead, Jordan?
Oh, sorry, Peter, you said a couple of comments. One on the electricity costs, I don't know if you mentioned it. But the note is under budgeted. We spent 86,000 in 2023. We spent 86,000, roughly 86,000 in 2023, 86,000 in 2024. So the budget for 2024 was 70,000, so we're 16,000 really under budgeted from what was actually spent. I don't know again if that was from timing of the budget being passed in November of 2023 for 2024, and maybe there were invoices that we hadn't received, we weren't aware of, kind of had come in late, so, with respect to the overage. The other thing, quickly, Councillor Ward, just on the, calculation of the, concession revenue and, concession expenses. So I think in the past, if you look at your, sorry, last year, if you look at the actuals. I wrote down here in my, it's about 1.23. We calculate the cost of the concessions versus the revenue we have. Our number used in this year's budget is 1.3. So that's 60,000 that we have for concession expenses times 1.33 or whatever percent to. That's when we got that 80,000 number. I think it's a pretty accurate number personally, but if we're seeing something that isn't or differs, and nothing more accurate, and then we work to shade us to kind of come up with that number based on obviously not knowing what the usage was for this year of arenas, but we try to use a factor and factoring in potential canteen pricing increases to kind of come up with that number. So it should be pretty consistent. Again, if my math is wrong, feel free to stop me.
No, that's great, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next one we have is parks. From what we have was originally presented back in February, we're just over $7,000. Right?
Just kind of, that number, had one other question.
Sorry, my God.
No, sorry, no, so we never really landed on the dehumidifier and the rooftop unit with, like, from a council perspective. And a staff perspective, where are we going with this? I just, I'm curious, sorry.
So you got the landing part is there on the budget right now. If council wants to use
So that's
that,
what I mean,
Yeah.
where are we landing here?
it's not there right now.
Yeah.
If the council wants to include them, then you have to go back and include them. Right now, they are not included in the budget.
I'll put it on the table. I worry about the dehumidifiers we're living on borrowed time. I would put a motion on the table that we move the dehumidifier project to the 2025 budget. And see their plans.
Seconder? We just seen where it landed.
Well, it doesn't work.
Yes. Go ahead, Councilor Ward.
Yeah, for the, you said the ice plant repairs for the compressor overhaul. Is it possible to do one of those, not both of those? Is that for just one or is that for both compressors?
Go ahead, Seamus.
So it's pretty there on that, that's, that would just be for one. On to,
2 or 30.
Just 236?
but that, it's not 17,000 just for that. So if, in the 17,000 will be for the compressor overall, but then there's also money similar to previous years that if repairs were to happen for him. So. Sorry, I hope I answered your question, but that 17,000 is not just to go, the cost of overhauling one of the two compressors is cheaper than 17,000.
Right,
But yes, it's only overhauling one, I believe, or another one having.
so there's only one in there.
Previous year.
So
Okay,
one.
yeah.
Any further comments? Go ahead, Al.
So the next one we have is parks. And the difference from the budget that was calculated is just over $7,000 down, so this one is less. The highlights of this are we're trying to use students better, and we use regular staff and custom stuff, but more we use students, we get better value for it, so that's good there. There was a picnic table at the community center, and then there are picnic tables over at the Westwood Park. The shelter went up last year, but there was nothing that went with the shelter, so these are pieces that go with the shelter. Questions?
Deputy Member.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. When it comes to the picnic tables, et cetera, can we not do some reallocation of picnic tables? We've got a lot of them at the Asphodel Park. I'm just wondering if we can do some reallocation this year, and on that note, the high school has a manufacturing program, and I'm just wondering if there would be a partnership available to, do some picnic tables, you know, maybe through the end of the year in the class, so those are my questions.
Seamus?
So through Mayor, so we had high school actually build us a second Wall Street from high school now. So a couple of their teachers have reached out about potential partnerships, so that could be an option. Reallocating, I know a couple of other councils mentioned only ordered one, so our goal is to try to have an accessible one every park. So I don't know if we, I don't believe, I have to check, but I don't believe Asphodel has two accessible. So if we reallocated one from there to another one, what we've also tried to do the last couple of years is order the plastic ones that are gonna last longer than the wood ones we have, and painting every year, they're rotting, they're breaking. Because here, Asphalt Park does have a lot of picnic tables, but on weekends that you can buy most, if not all of them are in use. It also is nice when people do have functions there, because that would be one of our adding the community center picnic shelter are two busiest for rentals, and it's nice when a group of 20 to 30 people, you can stay under the shelter. But that's something we could look at potentially. What would the cost be if the high school did one? But I know in the past couple of years, we've slowly been trying to order roughly about one plastic picnic table a year. Due to the fact that you're gonna get way more years out of them. But one option is, I know Councilor Moore mentioned that for Westwood, maybe you only order one and potentially through one of the committee she's on, or we just simply for this year, the committee can order it. For this year, we're bringing one from another park to get through, so there's two.
And that would be my recommendations, just to take a look at that. And Trent River Access Point's 3,500, I know that was looking at different options there. I don't see that as a priority right now, but remember there's one.
James?
Really new better. In the scenarios that we had, and I didn't discuss that, fortunately. We were involved in this process. So that is something in the next round, we can go back and evaluate, maybe it's bare minimum, maybe it's nothing, because in 2025, we're gonna just research all of them. Maybe it's putting a little bit, so if you had to do gravel. Or something minor to an access point, but that's something in the next round. It's for sure similar to the picnic tables, for sure we revisited.
So the three, what we'd be looking for is that something you want us to keep in there right now? Or is it something that we got a couple on the list with the clerk? If you want to add to that list, now would be a good time to do that.
Yeah, but yeah, I would say the Trent River Access Points eliminate. And perhaps one
Picnic
table
table.
for Western Shelter, and then look at reallocation if needed. But yeah, definitely the Western Park needs a picnic table, I get that.
Yeah.
And maybe moving one more out of Asphodel, but I'll leave that up to staff, they know best.
Thank you.
Councilor Moore?
Through you, Mayor. The one thing, I know you said that it costs less to have summer students, but the increase to 44,720 for summer hours, and I know I did reach out to Seamus for some comments, and that was for extra grass cutting. I think that 2024 was an exceptional year for grass cutting. We cut every week we cut, and I've never ever experienced that. If we went back to a traditional summer, we're not cutting grass like I just think maybe that could be trimmed back a bit.
Go ahead, Seamus.
So it's three years, so just to clarify that, grass cutting pharmacy facility is actually the least struck rate for the summer. So the one thing, for the staff, hour wages is, that's the one thing that we had back in reviewing this is. We budgeted last year using, I believe, just over 1,800 hours, and we ended up using 2,400 to our students. So this year we predicted 2,500, I believe it was 2,252, so there's only a 40. So that's the one thing that we're reviewing is if we spend 2,452, but for budgeting 2,500. I don't know, like 60,000 difference.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, so again, there's been a lot clean up, I guess you would say, with respect to wage lines and benefit lines and that kind of stuff. Too many for me personally. I'd like to see it even condensed, but I understand wanting to see the cost in certain areas. So, the first line there, the full-time payroll costs. You can see the actuals in the budget for 2024, if you're looking at the GLX and, yeah. There was a part-time salary and wages line where the actuals through the payroll system were hitting, that line at 28,000, but the budget fell, elsewhere. So we've just kind of made adjustments in a few areas. Obviously the budget last year was based off of, as James mentioned, less hours. And I think James already said, essentially, this year's budget is more of a true indication of what they feel needs to be used. I can't speak for that year over year or one year, but that's where it's at. So how the wages and benefit work essentially is we have a spreadsheet. And it's all built out with formulas and wages entered and number of hours are entered and all the benefits based off formulas are calculated. So those numbers can be reduced with a simple reduction in hours, that type of thing. But we take the hours that we're given, we put it in there for what is expected.
More questions on parks? Councilor Walsh.
So just like clear on this, kind of what we're looking to potentially remove, for the turnover access points, that 3,500 would come out. The line below that, the private picnic table at community center, what is? Is it staying or is it going?
One's gone.
I meant for that to go with
That
the
one?
one.
Just the
Oh,
one.
sorry, there were two lines.
Yes.
So yeah, for those two lines, for clarification, I just meant the one accessible picnic table. Right now,
Okay,
is what I was saying for 2025.
Okay. So that's inclusive of those two lines.
Yeah, sorry. I
Okay.
interrupted.
No, that's fine.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
I just have a question, hanging basket program, $5,300. I think it's a great program. I think it looks great. Can we cut those down a little bit? There's a lot of wages involved in that. Maybe they're ordered already. I don't know.
So,
Go ahead, James.
yes, they are, in the past 2 years, they've looked their best, staff have watered them 3 times a week.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, the heat, sometimes, some of the baskets, when it rains, benefit from them. But some of them on this stretch, that are in front of buildings, don't. On that too, I believe Councilor Warren, this question is, so. Actually, the executive assistant, prior to COVID, we actually did bring in a little bit of revenue from some of these tiny baskets. Obviously, during COVID, I guess the decision was made, businesses aren't open, bringing money, it was removed. I guess it's gotta be something that kind of fall on the wayside, so that is one option that we could actually look at. Some of these businesses that, if you live on a certain street and you have one at your house, should you be paid? Obviously, on Highway 7, on the highway, they're all, but I could do something moving forward that maybe you do look at, maybe the small people or everyone that has one, businesses, because maybe we have one, there's one at the right side, RBC's front steps. There is one on car wash, the street name of the street on car wash.
Theater.
Theater, so there's actually 2 in a businesses front porch, it's that water, so it could be something moving forward that we just. Only do twice a week, but I know. The reason we switched to 3 is if we only do twice. We're gonna die eventually too, maybe there's a mandate that. The goal is, as of this day, you take them down, because right now, you take them down after the fair, but maybe moving forward, it's say. We're only gonna put them up till. Kids go back to school, like, there's multiple options, obviously, too, depending on the weather we get.
Yeah.
On the weeks that it wasn't super hot, we're gonna do them 3 times a day, or 3 times a week. But that's why in the last 2 years, that yes, there are a lot of staff time, and then on 2 of those days, we do them Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 of those days, staff are doing garbages as well. So. You're kind of doing 2, and then obviously, there's times where one person can do them, but on Highway 7. It's easier to 2 people, but the driver's not getting out, facing traffic, watering, getting back in the vehicle.
Yeah, I just think that's something that can be looked at. So that 5,300, that's just the cost of purchasing though, that's not to
Those two-
maintain them,
Or
or is that?
Go ahead,
So
Alan.
those would be two separate pieces, so that's the cost of purchasing,
Yes.
that is not the maintenance.
Yes, okay,
cost.
yeah, I just want to clarify
That would
that.
be understaffed and.
Yeah, so that 5,300, I'm just thinking, like, can we cut that down a little bit? And then that would also cut down the maintenance. So I think that's something that we can throw back to staff. I don't want to throw a number out there, but I think that's something that can be looked at for the next draft. They can get the budget down by hours.
Yeah. Oh, actually.
Do I say
That's the time, Mayor, that's the time.
Councillor Hodgkrees.
Sorry, just going back to the picnic table discussion, so we're saying keep in the Pride picnic table and then the picnic table and accessible picnic table. My understanding in the first discussions was that it would be ordering a new accessible picnic table, but finding a regular picnic table from Asphodel and reallocating it. Is that my understanding? But then you said it differently the second time, so I was wondering.
Okay, so the first time I kind of lumped them together, I didn't split them between community center and Westwood. So I didn't make a motion, but to purchase an accessible picnic table for the new shelter at Westwood. And if one was needed to be reallocated to there, we could do that as well. As far as the Pride picnic table, I didn't have that on the table this year. I quite frankly, I'm not sure where that came from. We did the Pride bench. Was that last year or 2 years ago? No, that was last year. You were there. And I'm not saying it's off the table, but I think it's off the table for 2025 and we can move it to take a look. So my suggestion on both of those lines was one accessible picnic table.
Okay.
That was my,
I would argue that I understand through other discussions that the Pride picnic table was to make it a welcoming table. There had been discussions, Seamus, had you had discussions with Norwood Pride about that? And then I had also heard that perhaps that one, or there would be, or it would go to Westwood. I feel that we committed to the Pride committee or the Pride community to do 2 years of Pride. It wasn't, so I'm not sure how it did become a picnic table. That was the one thing. Yeah.
Through Mayor, so the library has just a bench that we physically have in a garage. That's to go to the West Library. I was under the assumption for previous staff that it was one this year, one next year. I believe Jordan found a staff report that went to council. I don't know if there was yes or no on it. Based off when we put this year's in, there was pushback that supposedly we hadn't contacted Pride. So based off of, I was under the assumption of, I reached out to Pride this year and said, we were supposed to do one this year, one next year. That was it. And then
I didn't hear.
we asked whether you wanted another bench or a picnic table, or do you want a Lions Park, because obviously, supposedly the first time around. They didn't have input on where it was, so we reached out to them, they came back with us after talking and said, we'd like to find a picnic table at the community center. But I was, that was just going off. Like, I don't know if we can go back and find
yeah,
something in the minute to you, or if it didn't make it to you, but.
Alan?
And I don't listen with this one, I'll make it more about it. My understanding was, yes, there was a number of different discussions that took place, but I don't believe there was any formal direction or commitment that was other than the discussions. Yes, we want to work with you, and we did that on the bench. We're happy to continue always doing that. But there is a difference between that and saying, yes, this is, we're committed to doing this. I don't believe those discussions took place at a council level.
Councillor Hodgkrees.
So the staff report that was passed was 2 Pride benches. They were benches. It wasn't a picnic table originally. In 2 consecutive years. It was 2024 and 2025. It was, because the original budget for the crosswalk was a staggering $8,000, and we all agreed that that was too much money for a crosswalk that would fade. So then it was reproposed that it would be a Pride bench, but Pride bench or benches, the plastic benches are expensive. So then it was, well, let's do it 2 Pride benches that almost totals the crosswalk that most people that, you know, so it was for 2 years for Pride benches. That was the staff report.
and can you pull that up to them, like, not right now,
Yeah.
not right now, but if I could direct staff to send that to us, because I honestly, I don't remember that at all.
And then,
Um,
following up is that the other part that was missing was where the bench should be placed. It wasn't discussed ahead of time with the Pride community and the Pride committee. It ultimately is fine where it is, but they would like, my understanding is that that's this kind of a separate piece from the Pride benches being approved. It's the community engagement part is where it should be. So that's kind of a separate piece in the staff report that was passed, we committed to one for 2 years. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So the one thing that did happen last summer too is one of the lead organizers, right, did come in and meet with me and we did have some discussions about the bench that was being done and everything. And I also reiterated with them that if they ever wanted to have any conversations, they were always welcome to come in and see us. And we were happy to talk to them. So that,
Yeah.
I understand that maybe the relationship prior wasn't as good as it could have been.
Yeah.
I think from that time forward, we've been doing pretty good
Yeah.
that way, and I do believe we have a solid relationship.
Yeah.
A two-way relationship with them.
Any further comments on?
So- So I guess that Pride bench will wait and see.
We'll see what.
Yeah, if you don't mind sending that forward, because I completely forgot, I thought it was 1 year and.
I wasn't, so good to look back on it. Councillor Rowe.
Yes, thank you. And just for that, the bench is about $1,600 because we had a quote recently as opposed to a picnic table, which is double the price. Right?
So through your mayor, I guess if you find a staff report, then
Yeah, I
you
haven't
can
seen it.
direct staff, but.
No.
When I was reaching out to them, I asked, like, do you want them like this?
Yeah.
Or do you want picnic table? They prefer picnic table, but if we found out what's written, then that can be decided amongst everything, but.
Councillor Hotchkiss.
And perhaps there would be an opportunity for sponsorship for the additional. So perhaps that could be something that we, as part of a community outreach and engagement, we seek to make up the difference in cost with a community partner as well, or a private donation, something similar to that.
All right, any further on parks? Go ahead.
And this one will be a little quicker, folks. So that's planning. The difference in this budget is approximately just under $1,300 less than when it was previously. I think Ed gave you guys a pretty good presentation last time. We really probably not a whole lot I can add to that. If there are any questions, I need to do my best to answer them. I'll have Ed get back to us on really not much different than what you were showing previously.
All right, any questions on the planning? No, go ahead.
But we can do that real quick. Okay, next one up being economic development. So we had, now this budget had come in less than it was last year. We went back and did some more work on it. And it is now $18,000 less than it was. So in 2024, the budget for the economic development had been almost $88,000. Now it's $69,000. For the money we are spending in this area, we do get a lot of value for it. With the changes that have happened in the county, I think we have opportunity right now. We have been doing our best to be in front of that opportunity, and we've been doing a pretty good job at it. I would suggest staying the course on that would be the best way to go.
Deputy Mayor Bird.
Can you just give me the details on the promotion expenses? What does that cover?
I had that question actually, and unfortunately, I did not get the answer time. I'd like to follow up with the community engagement person, and I can actually.
If you can let us know, that'd be great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Further questions? On economic? No? All right,
Sorry, I do have a question too. On the budget line, $5,000 is moved from EdDev for Canada Day over to I think, I don't know how it was moved, but it was $5,000. But my understanding was that a lot of that had been covered with donations and then help from the special events committee. What was the $5,000? I think you were gonna get back to me on that and I didn't get it.
Go ahead,
Jordan, can you give me anything on that one?
So through your, mayor, my understanding of Canada Day was, Seamus had a budget in recreation, right, Seamus, $5,000. So there were some expenses hitting that, was that the food this year?
Plus, the three rate, typically in the past, the only way it's done is more expenses. But I believe the 5,000 revenue should be, I believe they get a grant. But yes, last year there was nowhere near the 5,000 expenses because they just only buy some of the food. But yes, they moved it from our department because technically we have nothing to do with, we don't order the stuff for Canada Day. And that's why we moved the economic development.
Yeah, I know, but now that the Canada Day is cut back into a breakfast, I was just wondering.
What's that, 5,000?
The 5,000, yeah. The breakdown of that, because I know a lot of it was donated.
Right, yes, it was.
Was 2,500.
Yeah.
It was five,
That's in your revenue.
it was 5,000, it was under. Was under revenue? Because it wasn't, no one paid.
2,500, Council Walsh just referred to as under the revenue section.
Yeah, it's 5,000 that was moved from, I believe, your, right, Seamus?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. So.
Yeah.
It used to hit our department and you guys, I didn't want to hit our department because.
Yeah.
2 years ago, when they spent more expenses, when it had nothing to do with us. So I believe we get the 5,000 revenue or however much of it should be the grant
it was a
for
great.
Canada Day. And then the expense line should be whatever expenses are for the grant.
Alan?
So I think probably our best piece here is to go back and do a little bit of investigation, pull out some things. I believe there are good answers for this one, but I think we need to do a little bit of work just to figure out where the answer, the next update, we can give a better idea of just what went on with that.
Okay.
And also,
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if you could give a little bit more staff breakdown of economic development, because I feel like in some ways that some of this could be better spent. Like I know that we had a community improvement plan for the downtown and maybe increase that instead of like some of the wages that would go into economic development. It might better suit the business community that would benefit from economic development that way instead of a wage line, because we've been talking about that, and I just feel at this time, like we're still waiting to see what the county is doing. And I feel that we're doing too much at this when we have so many pressures on the budget. I'm not saying economic development is not a good thing for our community. I feel that we should scale this back.
Alan?
I'll start with the community development program first. The current community development, and Ed and I have had a couple of different conversations about this one. The current program we have, some of the challenges that is restricted in the area that it is, it's not across the entire municipality. That's one of the things we need to take a look at. But it's also right now set up as a loan program.
Yeah.
These loan programs are not across municipalities, they are not particularly popular programs. The ones that do really well are the grant programs. I don't know that's something we want to take on at this point, but if you really want to see uptake, if you really want to see them getting something out of it, that will be probably the biggest shift you can make. On the economic development side, if you don't have a face, if you don't have a lead on it, you're not going to be getting anything. On the county side, they're already realizing that 2 people to do everything that they want done, probably this is going to work out too well for them. They have understaffed, in my opinion, they have understaffed that. They have not set themselves up for success at all. They're going to have some challenges. If we don't have staff resources to support this community, then we will suffer for it.
As we were saying yesterday with Mayor Martin, there may be things that we can share a lot more of. Economic development could be one of those things. Any further questions on this portion? Carry on, Alan.
The last one for me, but the treasurer has some things to talk to you about as well. The last one I have is the Norwood Asphodel Cemetery. So the change from the previous budget that was, the draft budget that was shown to you is approximately $5,700. I'm gonna use a sentence I never thought I would in a budget presentation, but we have taken a more optimistic approach to how the cemetery usage will happen in 2025.
Is that what you call it?
That's what I call it, sir.
Questions? Go ahead, Councilor Wolf.
Thank you for you. I would like to see the contract, looked at, the contracted services for the site care. It went up $5,000 from 7,000 to 12,000. My understanding, you guys haven't finalized all the details. Again, I'll reiterate that last summer was an unusually wet summer. And I think that maybe reduction in the amount of times cut would help reduce those costs.
Go ahead, Alan.
We have already introduced one cut, so the quote that we originally got was for 10 cuts. We've already knocked 8 or 9. 8.
I think some, sorry, through you, Mayor, I think some of that isn't just necessarily all of the cuts. We're gonna have to check it.
So we have, again, the quote was originally for 10 cuts, and I want to point out to everybody that when we say cut, when he goes and does a cut of the cemetery, it usually takes 3 days to do a full cut.
Yeah,
So I didn't know that till I got in, when we said cut, I thought, okay, you go out on Saturday after you cut, that is not what a cut at the cemetery is. It's a 3-day endeavor to get that done. So we've already knocked it down. One, we are gonna have some conversations with him to start and say, when can we stage these so that we can try and get them up? Nobody wants to go to a cemetery and see that it's not being looked after. I don't think anybody wants that. But we do want to try and say, okay, what is the best time we can do this? We don't know what that is. Is it going to be summer of 24 again? Is it going to be? We don't know until we get there. We will be monitoring it as it goes. And if we need to make adjustments, then we'll make adjustments. But we've already pulled back on what the quote was for the fellow who's been doing the work for a number of years, said this is what he thinks he's doing. We've already told him that's not what the problem. He's aware that's not what it's going to be.
Okay, Deputy Member.
Yeah, just a comment on that, as somebody who does do some lawn cutting for summer residents in our area, we're having a summer like we did last year, where it was a little bit much, but also sometimes if you miss your cuts, if you extend those cuts even further, to say if 7 cuts or whatever, it's going to cost a whole lot more to cut it the times that you do cut it, because it's thicker, you put rakes or deal with it. So again, we've got to find a balance, and what is that balance? So that's just my point.
The other point I would also put up there is, this is our first year in going through and having a cemetery budget. Previously was done with the board and you've taken it over. I think we have something that is reasonable. Again, we have been a little bit more optimistic in usage. But I do everything, we still try to stay within what's reasonable.
Right.
I mean, we recognize what this vehicle is, we recognize why people are there for it, and we want to make sure it's maintained properly.
Councilor Walsh.
I just had one question to you, Mark. The part-time wages, is that just if us bringing it in as?
No, those were existing beforehand. That is something that has come in as a part of what we took over.
But we're not showing no actuals in 20, but this looks, it's not a brand new line.
Now let me look it up here.
So,
I can go back and double check
Yeah.
that, Counselor. My understanding was that was something that we had, so I'll look it up and see if I can find out about that.
Jordan.
Through you, Mayor, yeah, so essentially the cemetery coordinator at the time was receiving stipend of some sort for their services. They had come in house, that line they're receiving their part-time wages, and that amount is based off of an estimate of their hours per week, and their wage for their.
fair, but it's a lot more than their stipends. So, just, like, again, first year doing this, we have to figure out if that number could be a little high.
Go ahead.
Okay, that'll be one. The cemetery budget we bring next year, we'll have a lot more information behind the tree back up. I would point out that the budget right now, basically breaks even, and that's what we're hoping to have happen. So, but without having to really run through one of these previously, it is a little challenging for us, and when we present it next year, we'll have a whole lot more behind us to be able to say why we think we need to make this change. Right now, we don't have.
No, and that's, and again, we're talking less than 5,000, less than 6,000, so we're not talking big money.
But there's been a lot of them $5,000 we've talked
Yeah.
about today, that's Alan, pardon, Jordan?
Sorry, through you, Mayor, not to extend the conversation, obviously, we've been here a while. The wages for that line, the person also comes with a license to conduct business for the cemetery, so I'm not, you know, I'm not entirely sure, but there's a process we need to take on to get that license or to get somebody licensed. And I have seen the amount of work they have put in, but a stipend that I didn't see before, I think they're doing it.
They're doing under Alan, you have something?
So yeah, the treasurer makes an excellent point. The person that we have doing that work for us has a license. That gives us a whole lot more flexibility and not having to go out, not having to pay more for somebody when we need them to come in. So having that is an advantage to us. You know, we'll be able to provide better details on it after we've gone through the year, but having that expertise available, helping us transition over from where it was to where it is. The work should have just been a task that it'll really help us a lot. We're hoping that that benefit will continue into 2025.
Okay. Jordan, would you like to jump in now?
Okay, thank you through your Mayor, just to kind of summarize what we've seen today, so. Essentially, the reduction from the last draft is now at 8.11%. Obviously, that number fluctuates based off of decisions made today. That correlates to $11.57 per month for what we call the average residential taxpayer based on a property is $227,000. You compare it to last year's increase was a 3.92% tax increase with a $5.30 increase for the average resident taxpayer. I did make some notes on the tax rate. 2022 was a 0.91% increase. 2023 was a 2.5% increase. And 2024 was a 3.92 increase.
Went through a lot of reserves, though.
Yeah, I think we've discussed that before. I am gonna touch just quickly on the reserves. I know I was asked previously to, I think, provide a chart. I said I would, but I kind of didn't, so I apologize for anyone that wanted the chart. But if you look at the, we don't have enough, but if you look in the report on table 8, and no, that's okay, man. We talked about it. The reserves essentially are trending back towards where you were, I think, before development. I would just like to say that it is important. We don't have a lot of money transferring into reserves in this year's budget, just given the current circumstances. I know there's been some questions about the audited financial statements from 2023 and where they stand. 2024 had a need to draw a lot from reserves. In 2025 sees pretty much depleted reserves in fire due to the tanker. Sanitary will be in a very similar situation with the projects they have going on. We had $1.7 million or $1.73 million budgeted in revenue the last 3 years that we didn't get. So that's $700,000 to your development charges that we don't have to move towards other projects. The remaining 1 million was for sanitary hookups, water hookups, that kind of thing. Kind of puts some of those departments in tough situations. Obviously you have to do what you do to get through. It's my job. I feel like I have the easiest job here. I'm just taking information and trying my best to present it. But I don't think I'd be doing my job if I don't mention, you know, the importance of it for emergency planning, the importance of it. You know, maybe we can't get there this year, obviously, and we're never gonna get, I don't think, to the levels that we were at 2 years ago. At 5.6 million, I think it was, or sorry, 2021, without further development. But as you can see, the cost of the pumper and the grader. And the increased costs when we do have stuff go down, it's good to have the flexibility, so, I hope the information you received today and even in the draft prior, the stuff that's coming down the line, I know. The managers can all tell you, there's additional stuff that didn't make it even to that original draft. That is coming down the line, so, from my standpoint, if you could consider it in your decisions moving forward and stuff, I think it's important.
Thank you, Al.
So, we're there, just one thing I wanted to build on what the treasurer was saying, when he gave the reference about how the number of reserves you have is much more similar to 2017 now than it was, say, in the early 2020s. That number is that 2.5 million in 2017 was worth a whole lot more than the 2.5 million in 2025. So even though the numbers are the same, the value of what you can necessarily do with them is substantially different. You need to keep that, have that awareness when you're thinking about it.
All right. Well, thank you, Alan and Jordan. Council, may I get a motion to accept this report for information and further direct staff to incorporate suggestions as discussed into the third draft budget? Councillor Walsh, Deputy Mayor Burt, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving along to bylaws. Melanie, you have the floor.
Mayor, through you. That the bylaws confirm the proceedings of the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Asphodel-Norwood held March 5, 2025, be read a first, second, and third time in numbers 2025-14.
By Councillor Ward, Councillor Hodgkins. All in favor? That motion's carried. Okay, council, that concludes our business for today. May I get a motion for adjournment of our special meeting, and the time is 4:01. Deputy Mayor Byrd, seconder, Councillor Ward, all in favor? Motion carried.